Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if the gods read about Naruto Konoha. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Daniel G 2019 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. The Arrival. Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus, home to the Olympian gods such as Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Apollo, Artemis, Athena, Aphrodite, Ares, Hephaestus, Dionysus and Hermes. These gods were in one of their usual meetings in which Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades were arguing over who was Rhea's favorite, Apollo and Artemis were arguing over who was older, Athena was reading a book, Demeter was eating her ever-reliable cereal, Aphrodite and Ares were practically having sex with their clothes on. Dionysus reading a wine magazine, Hermes checking his delivery list, Hephaestus making plans for a new invention, Hera thinking about how she would keep Zeus from being unfaithful or how to punish him when he was unfaithful, and Hestia thinking that his family could never get along, but they were brought out of their musings because in a flash of light, the demigods hunters appeared disoriented because they didn't know what was going on. "I demand to know who has summoned you demigods here," Zeus said with his master lightning bolt in hand to impose order in the chaotic room. "We don't know, Lord Zeus," Annabeth, chaste daughter of Athena, said respectfully. "So, who would have the power to bring them here without us noticing?" Athena said curiously. But in the background giggles were heard that made everyone present turn to see where the laughter came from, and they saw that it was a hooded man. "Who are you, mortal?" Zeus shouted, preparing his lightning bolt to finish off the insolent mortal. "Calm down, super developed Pikachu, you can call me Dobby, I'm that you could call a dimensional guardian, and I've summoned you all here because I was bored," said the now named Dobby lazily. All the Olympians and the demigods hunters fell a drop of sweat at the hooded man's attitude, but if you looked closely, Zeus was red with fury at the nickname he had just been given, while his older brothers tried to contain their laughter. On the other hand, Dobby, seeing the reactions of his captives, decided to be a little more specific with what he wanted. "Well, seriously speaking, I have summoned all of you here because I want you to react to the story of an alternate dimension to yours," Dobby said seriously. "Wow." All the gods shouted together with the demigods and the hunters. "Wait a minute, you're telling me that the multiverse theory may be real?" Athena and Annabeth said excitedly. "Or yes, it is very real, my ladies. For example, in one dimension Percy Jackson is a woman," Dobby said, causing Percy surprise and discomfort. "In another Bianca D'Angelo never joined the huntresses and therefore did not die." I continue listing Dobby, hoping for Nico to see that, even if it is in another dimension, his sister is fine. "And in another dimension, you children of Kronos have an older brother named Kairos, who is the true lord of heaven," Dobby said again, impacting the children of Kronos, while Zeus thought about how to kill Kairos if he appeared, for according to him, taking away his domain. "And many others, but in order for you to react to this dimension that I will show you, it is first necessary that you know something beforehand," Dobby said seriously. "And what would that be if I may ask, Mr. Dobby?" Annabeth would ask curious. "It's too much trouble to tell you that myself, so I'd better do this," Dobby said and then threw a beam at him in pure Gother style, with which he would pass on the information of Xeno-sama, the Hikation and Kaioshin, etc. Author's note. The knowledge that Dobby gave to the Olympians, demigods and hunters, is just the basics of the divine hierarchy of Dragon Ball. End of note. Wow. All those present said, shocked by what they had just learned, and it was not for less, since they had just found out that in that dimension, there were beings that with a simple snap of their fingers, could destroy everything. Well, enough of the bullshit and let's continue with the reaction. This will be done through a book that I will provide for you to read, and the events narrated in the reading will be shown on the screen here," Dobby said, appearing a book out of nowhere and showing behind him a screen like the one in a movie theater that none of those present knew how it appeared. "So, who will read first?" Dobby asked and then saw how Athena and Annabeth immediately raised their hands, while the others chuckled at how similar mother and daughter were. "Well, Athena, you will read first, while I am leaving since I have many dimensions to supervise. I forgot, if you have any questions or want to know something, notes will appear with the information you want to know. Without further ado I say goodbye, until next," Dobby said, leaving through a dimensional crack. "Well, Owlhead as the book is called," Poseidon said. "Shut up, Barnacle Head, and the book is called Chosen One of the Divine Justice," Athena said with annoyance. "Well, I'll proceed with the reading," she said, opening the book. Chapter 1. How I let Bianca talk me into this, I'll never know. He thought of a 14-year-old boy as he tried to block out the other students' chatter and music playing. The teenager had dark black hair that stood up in all directions, dark blue eyes, slightly tanned skin, and 3 unique whisker-like markings on each cheek. He wore white boots, black pants tucked into the boots, a brown leather belt, a black shirt, a black leather jacket, a gold earring with a green stone on his left ear, and a silver ring on his right index finger. "What a handsome boy, if he was only a few years older I would take him to my bed," said the goddess of love lewdly as Ares growled. "He sure is a pig just like all men," she said coolly to Artemis with her hunters nodding in agreement. "I must admit the guy is handsome, I wonder if he eats cereal," Demeter said thoughtfully as Hades rolled her eyes and mumbled madly about the cereals. This was Naruto Uzumaki, a student at Westover Hall Military Academy. At the moment Naruto was attending a dance that was taking place in the gymnasium of the academy, although clearly, he was not there by choice, his friend Bianca D'Angelo, 13 years old, had made him come with her and her brother. 10-year-old Naiko, something Naruto had initially rejected as he hated large crowds. Naruto had met the D'Angelo brothers shortly after he had enrolled at Westover, and they had become great friends during their time together. Which was surprising, given that Naruto wasn't used to having friends, preferring to be alone, or due to the fact that he didn't stick around long enough to make friends before getting kicked out. "Hey, that's when we went looking for Bianca and Naiko," Percy said. "Although it's a bit sad that he hasn't had any friends." Hestia said something sad for the boy, while Athena frowned at the expelled part, thinking that the boy was a bad student. It wasn't his fault that he seemed to attract the jerks who can't back up his words. But getting back on topic, meeting Bianca and Naiko had been very nice, with Naiko being a curious kid, always asking questions, as well as being obsessed with pirates and the myth magic game, the latter of which Naiko tried to teach Naruto how to play. Being the keyword tried. All the demigods in the room laughed at how the fearsome Ghost King was when he was a little boy. "Oh, come on, you can't blame me for that, I was 10-year-old. Naiko shouted, embarrassed, increasing the laughter of the others. "I swear, it would be easier for me to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded than to play Naiko's game," Naruto thought, since half the rules of the game were overlooked and the other half made no sense. Although Naruto helped Naiko collect the figurines for the game, even managing to find the Hades figurine that Naiko had wanted. At the mention of said figure Naiko frowned as it brought back bad memories. As for his friendship with Bianca, Naruto would be lying if he said he doesn't feel a little closer to her than he does to Naiko. She was just a genuinely nice person who loved her little brother and protected him, but Naruto knew that Bianca didn't like having to always take care of Naiko either and wanted the chance to live her own life. That's not to say that she didn't love Naiko like any sister would, she loved and wanted him, but she would also like a break from being a mother. Hearing that, Naiko became a bit sad because his sister had to take care of him so much, but he couldn't be blamed back then, he was a little boy who had lost his mother and didn't know anything about his father. He really couldn't be blamed for the fact that he wanted to be with the only family he had left. Bianca was also quite quiet and shy, usually hiding her face under a floppy green hat which Naruto didn't like as he believed that Bianca shouldn't hide like that. "How cute. I'm sure those two will end up together," Aphrodite squealed hearing what Naruto thought of Bianca. "Shut up, bitch, and let Athena continue with the reading," Artemis said annoyed, while Athena sent her a grateful look to which she nodded. Naruto paused in his meditation before stretching his senses to see where Bianca and Naiko were, finding them in the stands. Looking up he saw the brothers with Bianca scolding Naiko for something. Naruto was able to sense them thanks to an ability he had started to develop about 7 years ago, and he had already had more control over them 4 years ago. And that was thanks to his mentor of his, he supposed would be the best description, or perhaps benefactor. One of his abilities was being able to sense energy, or Kai as his mentor called it. He had memorized Bianca and Naiko's signatures, so it was easy for him to find them. He was simply thankful that he also learned about the true nature of the world he lives in from his mentor, otherwise he would have been concerned that his energies felt cold and dark. What is Kai?" Percy asked, confused, to which the others nodded, equally confused. Suddenly, a note appeared in Annabeth's hands and, curiously, she decided to read it. "I is the inner energy of a living being, which can be mastered by anyone for better or worse. In general, the more energy that is concentrated, the longer it will take for the user to materialize. When a fighter increases his Kai, he is able to obtain greater strength, speed, resistance, as well as gain the ability to fly, expel energy blasts, and increase the power of his attacks to cause greater damage to his opponents, as well as also being able to feel the presence of the beings around them, whether they are animals, plants, human beings, etc." Annabeth read in disbelief at all that could be done with Kai. While everyone present was shocked by such information, on the other hand, Zeus thought that this boy was a threat to his throne. Although there were times when Naruto also felt people or beings that also had strange signatures. Like the new student, Grover Underwood, he felt similar to the natural energy found in the earth, trees, and animals. Whereas the deputy head, Dr. Thorne, the energy from him felt sick, like poison. Naruto frowned as he sensed 3 new signings entering the gym with Underwood, and the 3 of them had a strange feeling to them. One of them felt like lightning and wind, the second felt like the sea, and the third Naruto couldn't describe how he felt, but he was sure he wasn't a normal human. "Well, it seems that Bianca's boyfriend discovered us," Percy said with a nervous smile. "Seaweed head, this is no time for jokes," Talia said seriously. "Yes, I'm sorry," Percy said embarrassed. "Well, this can only go well." Naruto thought as from the way the first 2 signatures felt, along with Bianca and Nico's, things were about to get hectic. He watched as the 3 newcomers tried to mingle after Thorn showed up, which Naruto felt made no sense if he already knew who they were and why they were here. Keeping an eye on the 4 of them, Naruto watched and waited to see if they would do anything, but so far, they have continued to try to act natural. But after a few moments Naruto stiffened and mentally cursed when he couldn't feel Bianca, Nico, or Thorn in the gym, along with the owner of that firm that felt like the sea. Hearing that, Nico along with Hades got worried since they didn't want anything to happen to Bianca. Extending his senses even further, Naruto searched where they were, only to feel that they were now outside. Quickly, Naruto left the school and headed towards where Bianca and Nico's energy signatures were, while he made sure to keep his distance in case Thorn could sense him or if he had any allies nearby. "Well thought," Athena said approvingly. "Better continue reading Owlhead," Poseidon said quickly, wanting to prevent the Owlhead from starting his ramblings about plans and strategies. While Athena muttered stupid fish brain and continued reading. And while Naruto was confident that he could take on Thorn and anyone helping him, he wasn't going to risk Bianca and Nico getting hurt because he charged recklessly. Running through the forest, Naruto soon reached a clearing and a cliff where he saw Thorn standing with Bianca, Nico, and the other boy. While Underwood and one of the girls came out of the trees, with the girl wielding a spear and shield. Cursing his actions, Naruto ran through the trees as his right hand covered itself with a field of purple kai. Seeing Thorn transform into a manticore, Naruto increased his speed, and once he was close enough to him, he brought his kai-covered hand to the base of Thorn's scorpion tail and sliced it off. Everyone in the room was amazed at Naruto's kai prowess as he cut off the manticore's tail. "Arg my tail." Thorn roared in pain as his severed tail fell into the snow as Naruto jumped over Thorn, landing in front of his friends and the 4 strangers. "Naruto," Bianca said, surprised by the sudden appearance of him and his hand covered by that strange energy that she didn't help with everything else that was happening. "Oh man, that was great," Nico said, momentarily forgetting about the danger they were in favor of being amazed and excited by what Naruto had just done. "I don't blame him. I would have done the same if I had been in his position." Apollo, Hermes, and Percy said in unison upon seeing Nico's reaction from the book, while the women rolled their eyes and said men. "Hello Bianca, Nico. They're fine," Naruto asked concerned. "Why yes, we're fine. Totally, completely scared, definitely," Bianca said before Andromeda walked past them, pointing her sword at Naruto, believing him to be an enemy. "Who are you?" Andromeda demanded, suspicious of who this guy was and his strange abilities. "That is," Nico said with a mischievous smile forming on his face. "It's better to wait, Nico, we still don't know if he is who we think she is," Talia said as a dark smile formed on her face, and for her part, Percy had a bad feeling. "I'm the guy who just saved their butts after they blindly rushed into a situation they knew nothing about," Naruto said, directing the last part to Grover, Annabeth, and Talia, who shuddered at the accusation, knowing it was true. "Also, they should still be worried about Thorn and the helicopter currently targeting us with missiles." Speaking of, Naruto said, turning back to Thorn, who growled and glared at him for cutting off his tail. "Uzumaki. I knew he should have killed you earlier." Thorn grunted, having sensed something off about Naruto, but he knew he wasn't a demigod, so he left him alone, not believing he was really a threat and not revealing his identity ahead of time. A decision he was now regretting. The boy is not a demigod and has that power. He is a threat to Olympus. Zeus yelled, already making plans in case he ever met Naruto to kill him, according to him, to eliminate a threat. While the others were amazed that even though the boy possesses that power, he is not a demigod or even a legacy. "Please Thorn, if you tried to attack me, you would have simply died first. Now tell me what you were planning to do with Nico and Bianca, or I'll start cutting other parts," said Naruto, smiling grimly as he held up his Kami Retsuzan, God split cut, while Thorn scoffed at the threat from him, believing the brat simply got lucky earlier. "I like that boy," Hades said with a dark smile on his face, to which the second generation gods became uncomfortable. "You forget that I am the one with the helicopter, armed with missiles," he replied, Thorn smugly, believing that he had the upper hand in terms of power and weaponry. "What helicopter?" Naruto asked innocently. "Are you stupid, brat? That heli. Crack." Everyone watched in shock as Naruto swung his hand, releasing an energy blade that sliced through the ground and traveled straight towards the helicopter, cutting it straight in half. They then watched as both halves slowly separated before it immediately exploded and the wreckage fell into the ocean. While everyone in the room was equally shocked to see the destructive power of the dark-haired boy's technique. Just one slash with that Kai sword split the helicopter in half. Athena said in amazement while Ares cheered seeing the fight. Wow, that boy is powerful, even a demigod who is the son of one of the big three would have a hard time taking down a helicopter, but this boy did it with just one slash of his energy sword. Poseidon said in surprise seeing such a display of skills. I want to fight with him. Ares shouted with emotion seeing the one who would possibly be a worthy rival in combat. Zeus thought of 1,000 ways to kill that dark-haired boy if he ever found him. All I see is junk. Naruto said, smiling wickedly at Thorn's shock and growing fear. Awesome. Thalia murmured astonished by what she had just seen. Now about those answers she wanted. Naruto said approaching Thorn, who unconsciously took a step back but quickly growled and buried the fear he felt for what he had just witnessed. DSK, I don't need those pathetic mortals to kill you brat. Thorn roared leaping at Naruto to rip him apart but the teen didn't seem the least bit concerned. So, you can die too, right? Naruto said before pointing his palm at Thorn and creating a ball of golden energy with a black circle. Before Thorn could even think to dodge, Naruto fired the energy ball at him like a great bolt of lightning that consumed the manticore, obliterating it completely. Everyone in the room had not the slightest doubt that the weirdly haired teenager was powerful, but how could they doubt his power when they saw him firsthand beat a manticore without even breaking a sweat? But both annoyances resolved, Naruto turned to his friends and the 4 strangers, with the demigods from Camp Half-Blood tensing in case they had to fight this guy. Although they made no move to attack, they felt that they would be completely outmatched, especially after what Naruto had just done. Can someone please explain to me what is going on? She yelled Bianca upset as the stress and madness of everything that was happening around her became too much and right now, she just wanted a straight answer to what was going on. Naiko, who was watching his sister's outburst from the other dimension, became worried because it seemed that so many things happening at the same time would break his sanity. Before anyone could say anything, Naruto tensed before grunting as a silver arrow suddenly pierced his shoulder. Bianca gave a short cry as she watched her friend get shot and Naiko gasped in shock. While the others looked in the direction of the arrow, only to see a dozen girls, the youngest looking about 10 and the oldest looking 14, all dressed in silver ski parkas and jeans and armed with bows. They also looked at Naruto for some strange reason, at least Andromeda, while Thalia, Annabeth and Grover knew who those girls were. The Hunters. Annabeth said, shocked and concerned at what they had just done. Seriously Artemis, it's just that your hunters have no sense of danger when attacking someone who killed a manticore without even breaking a sweat and I'm a warmonger, but at least the strength of my opponent is recognized. Ares said as Artemis frowns, but she didn't say anything knowing that what Ares said was true, while the hunters looked away in shame. Oh great. Thalia murmured, now annoyed by the appearance of her least favorite group. Even worse was the fact that they had probably just turned an unknown force into an enemy with strange and powerful abilities. You see, even our father's punk daughter agrees it was stupid of your hunters to shoot that boy. Ares said, rubbing Artemis's mistakes on her face, which frowned even more, but she knew that this was not the time to reply, and Thalia, for her part, also frowned because of the punk thing. Authors note me, again. In this reading Thalia did not join the hunters. End of note. Okay now I'm angry. Naruto said, breaking off the arrowhead and yanking the arrow into his shoulder as the huntresses aimed more arrows at him. You'll be quiet boy. Spat out one of the girls, who looked like a Persian princess wearing a silver ring on her head looking at Naruto as if her mere existence offended her. While in the room Artemis and her jackets looked sadly at the image of their lieutenant. Calm down, Zo, the boy is just ignorant. As expected of a mortal. Another girl, possibly 12 or 13 years old, said before Naruto scoffed. Well, the boy is standing right here. And no, I'm not ignorant, I know who you are, Artemis, goddess of the moon, and your merry band of Girl Scouts. I'd say it's an honor, but I'd be lying, that and the fact that you just shot me. Naruto said, with Andromeda, Thalia, Annabeth and Grover surprised that he knew who they were, while Bianca and Naiko were only more confused. Look at the size of those balls. Hermes and Apollo said with shock when they saw how the dark-haired boy spoke to Artemis, who frowned. The hunters, however, glared harder at Naruto for saying their patron's name, while Artemis narrowed her eyes at their knowledge. Not to mention those strange abilities that she seemed to possess. If you know who I am, boy, then you'll know that it's in your best interest to do what I say. Artemis said, knowing her father would want this stranger brought to Camp Half-Blood to be watched, rather than allowed to roam freely. That arrogance of yours will cost you, hunter. Hades said, looking at Artemis, who shrank at the look of her uncle. Well, the hunters wanted to reply, but they were not foolish enough to go against the lord of the underworld. "It's okay?" Naruto asked, smiling as Artemis gave him a warning look. "Yes, or else." Artemis replied, Naruto's smile widening before looking at the arrow previously on his shoulder. "Here is my answer to that," Naruto said before suddenly disappearing in a burst of speed, shocking everyone. Her surprise only grew when Naruto reappeared in front of Artemis and drove her fist into her stomach, causing the goddess to double over in pain and shock before flying back into the trees. "Take it," Ares shouted with emotion, seeing how his hunter sister was kicked in the butt, who frowned while the hunters worried about her mistress. "Lady Artemis." Zoe yelled in concern for her lady before glaring at Naruto. Without hesitation, all the hunters started shooting arrows at Naruto, who was now prepared for the attacks and managed to catch every arrow they shot at him. Naruto then hurled the arrows at them, severing their bowstrings. With their bows damaged, the huntresses drew their hunting knives and attacked Naruto together. Although, well, they had the advantage in numbers and had enhanced physical abilities bestowed by Artemis, coupled with their training, Naruto bested them in every category. Seriously, they really think they can fight someone who sent Artemis flying with one blow? Hermes said in disbelief at the stupidity that his sister's hunters had done, which only turned their heads in shame, since even they themselves had to admit that it was very stupid. Ducking and dodging the stabs and slashes, Naruto waited for his chance to strike back. Once he saw it, he grabbed one of the hunters by the arm and elbowed her in the shoulder, dislocating it before grabbing her by the neck and throwing her into the woods. Ducking under two more of the hunters' knives, Naruto maneuvered behind them and smashed their heads in, taking them out. Naruto then turned around and blocked Zoe's knives with her finger, with the Slayer glaring at him for attacking her sisters. Only to gasp in pain when Naruto lifted her leg and slammed her foot into her stomach, sending her flying into a tree. Sensing the danger, Naruto activated his divine court and blocked Artemis's own hunting knives, with the goddess glaring at him with a vengeance. "You will pay to attack my hunters, boy," Artemis growled, while Naruto smirked at her. "Artemis, your hunters attacked him first and he just defended himself," Athena said, to which Artemis blushed with embarrassment. "Attack is such a strong word. I prefer to defend myself," Naruto replied, which only seemed to infuriate Artemis even more. "Defend yourself. You attacked me first and they retaliated," Artemis replied as she tried to force Naruto back with her knives, only for him not to even move. "But seriously?" they all said except Artemis, while the latter was even more embarrassed. "No, you shot an arrow at me first, unprovoked, I might add, and I attacked you the same way. I only attacked your hunters after they fired more arrows at me, and if you noticed, they attacked to kill me, well, I just disabled them," Naruto said. "You broke Phoebe's arm," Artemis yelled. "Would you have preferred me to break her neck?" Naruto responded, now starting to look bored, adding to Artemis's anger that she is using all of her strength and yet he doesn't show an ounce of tension. Hearing that, Phoebe shuddered as she rubbed her arm, feeling a phantom pain. Well, he's right, he was within his rights to respond with deadly force, seeing his life threatened by the hunters' attacks, but what he did was incapacitate them, Athena said. She had even transformed into his adult form, but he still didn't do anything. Besides, if you have someone to blame, blame yourself. You're the one who recruited those girls, who are barely teenagers, into a group where they go out hunting dangerous monsters every day. In any case, you should be thankful that I just struggled to knock them out. I'm sure there are a lot more things out there who would rather brutally kill them while you watched," Naruto added, further adding to Artemis's anger at the fact that she was right about her hunters facing dangerous monsters every day. The only reason they remain safe is because of her presence, but there is always the chance that they will die alone when she is not around to protect them or if she sends them out hunting herself. Artemis frowned at that as the boy, as much as he hated to admit it, was right. "Also, this is getting boring, so I'll end this charade," Naruto said, getting serious for a moment before Artemis was surprised that Naruto forced his hand to cut straight through his knives. Using her surprise, Naruto pulled Artemis's feet out from under her before placing her hand on her throat. "Now you know who I am and it would be best for you to leave," Naruto said, using Artemis's own words against her. Although Naruto then heard the sound of an arrow cutting through the air. Bowing his head, Naruto allowed the arrow to fly past him, only for his eyes to widen as he saw the arrow fly straight at Bianca and Nico. "Artemis, if anything happens to my children because of your hunters, different dimension or not, you will feel my full fury," Hades said with a voice so cold that he sent chills down the spine of everyone in the room, especially Artemis. "Damn," Naruto mentally cursed, speeding up in front of the brothers, grunting in pain as the arrow pierced his left side. "Naruto, are you okay?" Bianca asked, freaking out as she was shot again, this time to protect her and Nico. However, before Naruto could respond, she noticed the arrow begin to glow, causing his eyes to widen before he quickly backed away. Just in time when the arrow suddenly exploded while she was still stabbing him inside. Everyone in the room was shocked to see how the arrow that hit the dark-haired boy exploded, while Hades was furious, since that arrow could have hit his children. On the other hand, Artemis turned white with fear when she saw how close she was to kill her uncle's demigods. The aftermath caused Bianca to scream in horror, Thalia's eyes widened in shock, while Andromeda, Annabeth, and Grover turned green in horror, and Annabeth luckily covered Nico's eyes to prevent him from seeing it. Now that Naruto had a giant hole in his side, with blood splattered all around him. Shit. Naruto muttered, falling to one knee as he grabbed his side, Bianca running to his side, trembling when he saw how much blood there was. "Oh okay, if we hurry, we can take you to a hospital or something," Bianca said, panicking and swallowing the bile in her throat as she glimpsed the inside of the hole and could see Naruto's organs. It's fine Bianca," Naruto said, feeling dizzy from the blood he lost. "He is dying," Apollo said, seeing the amount of blood that the dark-haired man lost. Well. You have a hole in your body, that's not right," Bianca yelled. "Yeah, and Alredute's starting to heal," Naruto said, moving his hand, and to the girl's surprise, she could see the wound slowly mending itself. "Incredible," Apollo said, impressed to see such healing ability of the dark-haired boy. "His ability to heal is impressive," Athena said, looking at the dark-haired boy on the screen. "Now that's great," Percy said, impressed. For his part, Zeus no longer had any doubts that the dark-haired boy on the screen was a threat to his throne. How? Bianca asked, not sure that she might be surprised by something else right now. "I'll explain later," Naruto muttered, before finally falling to the ground, with Bianca afraid that she was dying, only to relax a bit when she saw that he was still breathing normally, or so normally. As one can with one big breath. "Hole in them. That boy has very strange and interesting abilities," Athena said, looking analytically at Naruto, to which Poseidon rolled his eyes. For their part, Nico and Hades, seeing Bianca's reaction, worried, since all the events that happened in the reading were testing her sanity. Slowly, Thalia, Andromeda and Grover approached Bianca, with Annabeth still covering Nico's eyes, not wanting to scare the girl any more than she already was. "Hey Bianca. We can help you get him to a safe place, okay?" Thalia said, kneeling next to the girl, who was looking at them suspiciously. "You're not going anywhere until that boy is dead," Zoe spat, aiming an arrow at Naruto, with Thalia looking at her. "It's serious, sister, your hunters are irrational, look at attacking someone who is far superior to them and not only annoy him," Athena said. "Really, Nightshade? Don't you think you've done enough damage?" Thalia said, not believing that the hunter was still around, with Zoe looking at her with distaste. "Of course, you would side with another destructive male, Thalia Grace," Zoe said, with Thalia growling as lightning crackled in her eyes. "At least I wasn't stupid enough to attack someone who clearly could have killed us all, even your precious mistress couldn't do anything. And it's night to begin with." Thalia shot back, knowing neither of them stood a chance against someone even an Olympian couldn't turn down, even during a time when she's at her strongest. "My counterpart is right, the fact that the hunters attacked Naruto was stupid, and even more so when he showed that he could fight their patron goddess without any problem." Thalia said to what the hunters were annoyed by the words of the daughter of Zeus, but they could not refute her words. "Enough. Zoe, help the others collect the wounded and bring them back to camp," Artemis said, holding up a hand and stopping Zoe's protests, before her lieutenant nodded stiffly and went to help her sisters. The goddess then looked at the demigods, who looked at her warily. "If you all walk us back to our camp, I can explain everything that's going on, Bianca D'Angelo. You can bring the boy and I swear he won't be harmed," Artemis said, not wanting to bring Naruto to her hunter camp, but she realized that she already ruined first impressions of her and didn't want things to deteriorate further. "Yes, of course," Ares said mockingly. Bianca was about to reply, but Thalia put a hand on her shoulder and nodded, along with Andromeda and Annabeth, showing that they would help her if the hunters attacked. Then, reluctantly, Bianca nodded before lifting Naruto up with the help of Thalia, with the demigod grunting at how heavy she was. With that, Artemis led them back to where her hunters set up camp. "Scene change. Naruto's mindscape. Interesting," Athena said, with her daughter nodding in agreement while the other gods watched the scene carefully. Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes and found himself in a log cabin. He wasn't worried about his sudden change of location, as he knew it was just his mindscape and his body was still where he was. Naruto got up and walked out onto a balcony with a table overlooking a beautiful forest. Although Naruto didn't look at the sight, he instead looked at the being sitting on the table. He was a green-skinned man with pure white hair that stood on end, with long protruding bangs on the right side, gray eyes, with gold and green earrings in both ears, a ring on his right index finger like Naruto's, and wearing black robes with red trim and white boots. Hey, that's not one of the Kaioshins Dobby showed us when he brought us here. Percy said, looking carefully at the image of the green-skinned man. To tell the truth, seaweed brain, yes, he is a Kaioshin. Annabeth said, excited to see a Kaioshin with her own eyes. Naruto wordlessly sat down next to the man, who was also drinking tea, as he raised an eyebrow at the phone on the table. Only to moan when it started to ring. "Well, I hope someone answers that phone," said the being with a double-layered voice. "Fuck, I hate you," Naruto muttered, grabbing the phone and answering it, only to pull it back when the being's voice practically yelled at him. "Because I fucking called him." Growling, Naruto grabbed the phone and tossed it into the distance as the being smirked at him. Yes, I get it. You were right, the gods would attack me, and now that they know I exist, they will try to control or kill me. Don't look so smug, Zamasu," Naruto said to his mentor teacher. Yes, this being's name was Zamasu, specifically fused Zamasu, the fusion between the original Zamasu and Goku Black, another version of Zamasu from a different timeline. Created after taking over the body of the Saiyan, Son Goku. Hearing that, Annabeth along with Athena quickly started taking notes, wanting to find out as much as possible about Zamasu, while the other occupants just wondered where the hell they got their notebooks and pencils from. You see now, the gods of this world are petty, arrogant, cruel creatures who do not serve their divinity, and now they must face judgment, Zamasu said, now getting serious. All the gods in the room upon hearing that frowned. Who does that guy think he is to insult us like that? Ares said with a frown. Damn bastard, how dare you insult us like that? Zeus growled with his master bolt ready to strike, but Hestia's cough calmed the annoyance of everyone in the room. Calm down everyone. Hestia said, to which everyone in the room immediately calmed down. Although the word said bother me a little, we should not rush, better let's see what happens. Hestia said, to which Athena nodded and then continued with the reading. For those who knew Zamasu, they would be surprised, even shocked, to hear him speak of gods in such a way. Since Zamasu saw the gods as perfect and beautiful beings. That was true for the gods of his universe, but these gods are anything but. The annoyance of all the gods increased even more by the insult, however, following Hestia's advice they decided to continue with the story. This change in perspective began in the original Zamasu universe, after Black and the original Zamasu merged to face the Saiyans, Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks. The fight had gone in his favor until he realized that by fusing the immortal Zamasu and the mortal Black, his body was no longer balanced because now he could die since he was no longer completely immortal. He led his body to mutate as his regeneration worked to hold him together. However, that became the least of Zamasu's worries as his enemies once again tried to seal him away, this time managing to trap him. Only for something else to go wrong again as, due to all the time travel in the area, coupled with the rift Goku Black created earlier, with the sickle of pain, a rift in time had opened in space. Sucking on the container he had been sealed in, spitting him out into a once empty universe. Fortunately, the container had broken, releasing Zamasu with his body completely destroyed, but his immortal essence remained, leading to his essence spreading out and creating a whole new universe. Everyone in the room was extremely surprised to hear about how their universe had been created, since, although they knew that Chaos, the primordial god of the void, created everything, they did not know how he did it. Wait a minute, so if Zamasu created our entire universe in that dimension and he's inside Naruto? Hermes said, leaving the rest in the air. Our counterparts are in deep trouble. Hades said, reaching the same conclusion as her nephew, to which everyone in the room shuddered, especially Artemis, since she and her hunters had attacked the chaos container. At first, Zamasu was pleased with this, as he could now make an entire universe in his image, one that was perfect, beautiful, and free of those cursed mortals. That was until Zamasu realized that he not only created a new universe, but he also created new gods. Again, this pleased Zamasu, having created new deities, only, to his horror, they behaved not like true gods, but like mortals. Arrogance, cruelty, pettiness and violence, everything he hated in mortals was within these deities born from his own power. He only got worse with the titans and then even worse with the gods themselves. With only a select few actually worthy of being called gods. And the worst thing was that they all came from himself. The gods no longer knew how to feel upon hearing all this, since if they looked back at their actions, they had behaved like the mortals they underestimated so much. It was a bitter pill for Zamasu to swallow, that these arrogant creatures that were worse than even the cruelest of mortals, came from him, or Chaos, the primordial of the void, as all have come to see. None of them really knew about Zamasu himself. And as time passed, with each cruel and horrible action performed by the gods, Zamasu became more cynical and believed that his utopia was impossible to achieve. But he also looked at the mortals and saw that they were not all heartless and cruel abominations as he originally believed. They were capable of goodness and of desiring peace. It was upon realizing this that Zamasu created a new plan, such as the Zero Mortals plan. Only, instead of exterminating all mortals, he would eliminate all evil, cruel and twisted, leaving those who really deserve to live in his utopia. All the gods shuddered in fear upon hearing that, as they did not want to fade away. Unfortunately, as he was now merely a formless void, Zamasu needed to find a champion to execute his will, to bring true justice to his universe. And he found the perfect one in Naruto. Although at first, Naruto didn't really care about helping Zamasu accomplish his plan, he didn't really care what the gods did. However, this didn't deter Zamasu, rather he still trained Naruto and simply waited for him to realize the truth on his own. But he would never live in peace if the gods discovered his existence. Was it a covert tactic, perhaps? But Zamasu also knew that sometimes someone needed to experience something firsthand to understand the situation. And now Naruto has, with him meeting Artemis. That confirms that Artemis sentenced our destiny, all due to her irrational hatred of men. Said Athena with a frown. Apollo wanted to defend his sister from him, but he knew that she couldn't say anything. So, what do we do now? Naruto asked. Since you're not dead yet, Artemis will likely force you to go to Camp Half-Blood, which will help us immensely. It will give you the opportunity to gather recruits from among the Olympians' own children, once you show them your true nature. Of their parents, will join us in creating a better world. Zamasu explained that while Naruto himself was already powerful and would only get stronger, it never hurts to have allies in a fight. And what about the other gods? What should I do if they try to attack me? Naruto asked, knowing that there are other pantheons besides the Greek. I think the answer is obvious. Zamasu responded with a smirk, which Naruto matched with a smirk of his own. I just made sure I got the go-ahead. Naruto said, now fully on board with Zamasu's plan to inflict divine justice on mortals and gods. With that, Naruto folded his arms and waited for his body to finish healing. I finished. Athena said, closing the book. End of chapter. Episode 2. So, you're saying that the Greek gods are real, that monsters are real, the underworld, Olympus, all of that is real. And not only that, but me and Nico are also demigods, born from a mortal and a god. Bianca said, looking between Andromeda, Annabeth, Thalia and Grover with wide eyes of disbelief, while Nico was being uncharacteristically quiet. Prrrrrrrr. It was the growls of Nico and Hades when they saw that scene, since that was when their daughter-sister was tricked by Artemis into joining her camp and later dying. Currently, the group had returned to Artemis's camp while keeping their distance from the hunters, given how bad their first impressions were of the group. Or in Thalia's case, already having a low opinion of them, with their attack on Naruto making it drop even further. They had also brought Naruto and made sure none of the hunters could try anything or get a clear shot at him as he recovered. Bianca and Nico were just thankful that the hole in his side was almost fully closed. I'm still amazed at that boy's healing ability. Apollo said with interest, of course being the god of healing, seeing someone who had such regeneration ability would cause his interest. It must be an advantage he got from being the container of chaos. Athena said, to which the sun god nodded in agreement. Afterwards, the three demigods and the sole satyr of the group had filled the siblings in on the new world they just entered, from the gods to monsters to demigods, everything. Yeah, that's pretty much covers it. We also don't know who your godly parent is, which is a good thing, since if you knew, then your demigod scent would be much stronger and attract more monsters, like Thorn. Annabeth said, with Bianca feeling lightheaded as she processed all this information. I think I'm gonna be sick. Bianca muttered, wanting nothing more than to empty her stomach. Nico and Hades were worried when they heard that, since it seemed that Bianca's mental health was in decline due to all the strong revelations that had just happened, so they only prayed that Bianca was okay. Normally, she would deny everything she just heard, calling these people crazy and grabbing her brother to get as far away from them as possible. But given what she saw Naruto do, that power he had, along with the fact he had a giant hole in his chest less than 10 minutes ago and was still alive, not to mention healing at the moment. So, Bianca was willing to believe a lot of things, right now. This, however, brought up an entirely new set of problems. The most concerning being, she and her brother were connected to possibly the most psychotic and evil beings in the world. All the gods except Hades and Hestia were outraged upon hearing Bianca's thoughts. How dare that mortal insult us in that way? Zeus yelled in fury as he held his master bolt, ready to unleash a barrage of bolts. Well, she doesn't lack reason. Hades said calmly, to which everyone looked at him with a frown. What do you mean, brother? Hestia said. Where do I start? Hades said, holding his chin. I know, first, because Athena lost in a weaving contest, she cursed Arachne, turning her into a spider monster and condemning her children to be hunted down and killed by Arachne. Also, let us not forget Medusa, who, having been raped by Poseidon and Athena not being able to take revenge on him, she cursed an innocent woman, turning her into a monster and once again condemning her demigods to be persecuted and killed by Medusa. Hades said, to which Athena frowned but couldn't refute her words, while Annabeth looked at her mother with wide eyes, not knowing how she felt. Then we have Poseidon who, not being proclaimed as the protector god of the city of Athens, in a tantrum, sent an earthquake and destroyed it. Hades said, to which Poseidon growled. We also have Hera, who kills all the women Zeus slept with, even though they weren't to blame for anything. Hades said, to which Hera frowned. And so, it could go on all day, but that would take away our time to read the book. Hades said, to which Hestia gave a sad sigh that her family could never be united. Given Nico's obsession for mythmagic, Bianca figured it'd be a good excuse to learn more about Greek history and myths. And safe to say, Bianca was horrified at everything she read and the atrocities the gods had committed. Through her digging, she had managed to uncover some of the tales that the gods hid to make themselves look good. Murder, rape, turning people into monsters, destroying entire cities, even slaughtering entire families, just for the slightest of insults, or perceived insults. Well, there were a few genuinely good or decent gods, the most notable being Hestia and, surprisingly, Hades. The latter surprising Bianca when she found out that he was actually a reasonable god rather than being evil, like in most media. Hades smiled at that since finally someone saw that he was not as he was represented, while the other gods except Hestia frowned indignantly, but did not say anything, since everything that was said was true. For their part, the demigods in the room hearing all this were in shock, not knowing what to say, since they were not always told in the camp that the gods were fair and impartial, but it seemed that everything was a lie. Though she had to guess that the negative light that Hades has been depicted in was due to the rise of Christianity and how the underworld became associated with hell and the devil. However, despite this, the bad ones far outweighed the good ones. Fucking Christianity. Hades said with a frown at the thought of the Christian religion. It honestly made Bianca consider taking away Nico's mythmagic collection and destroying it, not wanting her brother to look up to monsters, like the gods. But she also didn't want to destroy his view of his favorite game, so she held her tongue and smiled as Nico played his game, while making sure he never found out how horrible the beings it was based on really were. Now, she's learned that not only were they real, but one of her and her brother's parents was a god. Oh god, please don't tell me, Bianca thought, turning green as her mind took a darker turn, as she's read enough stories to know what happens to women who attract the god's interest, for one reason or another. Bianca mentally begged that she and Nico hadn't been the byproduct of a god raping their mother. Thanks to chaos that our father is you. Nico said, looking at his father with a smile, which Hades returned. Meanwhile, Nico had stayed silent throughout the explanation. Normally he'd be excited to learn that he and Bianca were the children of a god, even better, one from his favorite game. But given how their friend was attacked and nearly killed by Artemis and her hunters, he wasn't as excited as he'd normally be. Just then, the group's attention turned as they saw Zoe approaching them, making the demigods tense and ready for a fight, if it came to that. Thankfully, Zoe didn't make a move for her bow or hunting knives, but did send Naruto a scathing glare before addressing the demigods. Seriously? It's that they don't learn. Athena said, exasperated. Hey, don't insult my hunters. Artemis said with a frown. Silence, Artemis, it is because of the irrational behavior of your hunters that our counterparts are being targeted to be eliminated by chaos, and who knows if the same thing happened in our dimension and chaos is just waiting patiently for the trigger that will unleash all his fury on us. Athena said, silencing Artemis and making all the occupants of the room nervous. Lady Artemis requests thy presences, Bianca D'Angelo, Andromeda Jackson, and Thalia Grace. Zoe said, while glaring at Thalia when she said her name, which Thalia happily returned. Hearing that, Nico frowned because he remembered very well that it was at that moment that his sister was brainwashed to join the group of Girl Scouts of Artemis, in which she met her death, although he did not know. His thoughts were shared by his father, who looked at Artemis with a look that promised pain so great that it would make Tartarus look like a walk in the park, which made the moon goddess shudder. It's your presence, Nightshade. Stated Thalia, having always been annoyed with Zoe's archaic way of speaking, before looking at Bianca, who didn't seem too eager to speak with the mood goddess. It's alright, Annabeth and Grover will make sure your friend is safe. And we'll be there with you. Andromeda assured, putting a hand on Bianca's shoulder, with Thalia nodding in agreement, while the girl nodded hesitantly. With that, the three demigods were led by Zoe towards Artemis's tent, leaving Annabeth and Grover with Naruto and Nico. Grover, why don't you keep Nico company, I'll watch Naruto. Said Annabeth, with a sadder nodding, before approaching the boy and asking him about his game, making Nico perk up as his mood soon brightened, before he happily started explaining mythmagic to the satyr. Stupid fucking game. Grover thought, crossing his arms in annoyance, since that game was too complicated. He was sure that it was easier to compose a song with his flutes than to play that game. Seeing they were now occupied, Annabeth smiled at that, doing the trick and cheering Nico up before glancing at Naruto while having to fight down a blush as she admired his looks. Given that she was now more focused on him and not his powers, and Annabeth had to admit that he was rather handsome. It seems that little Annabeth likes Naruto. Aphrodite said with a mischievous smile, which made the blonde blush and annoyed Percy. While she was an experienced demigod, Annabeth was still a teenage girl with hormones, and she could appreciate a good-looking guy like Naruto. Though her attention was inevitably drawn to his whisker marks. Are those real? Annabeth wondered as she looked at them, wondering if they were real or just tattoos. Honestly, I also wonder if those marks are real. Aphrodite said curiously, receiving a look from everyone, to which she only grumbled and went back to reading. Curiosity getting the better of her, Annabeth slowly reached over to touch Naruto's whiskers, only to quickly retract her hand when she saw he was coming to. Groaning, Naruto rolled his head around, cracking his neck. Sitting up, the first thing Naruto saw was Annabeth staring at him. Take a picture, it'll last longer. Naruto said, before moving his jacket and shirt to see the hole in him was now fully healed. Trapped. Leo said with a smile, cutting off all the tense atmosphere that had formed a while ago, which the demigods were grateful for, since they were very uncomfortable because of all the tension that had been generated. Sorry. I didn't mean to stare, but given what we all saw you do. Can you blame me? Annabeth said, quickly. I guess not, since I doubt it's every day you meet someone with powers like mine, or be able to take out a goddess, as easily as I did. By the way, we weren't properly introduced, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto said, while holding out his hand. Artemis, hearing that, growled furiously since she felt humiliated that her counterpart was defeated by, according to her, a pig, but she remained silent when she received a look from Athena, which made her fall, and she paid attention to the reading. Annabeth Chase. Annabeth replied, grabbing Naruto's hand, only to be surprised when he kissed it. Pleasure to meet you, Annabeth. Said Naruto, while smiling at her. Annabeth blushed at that scene. Wow, the boy is a real gentleman. Aphrodite said, licking her lips. Looks like little Annabeth got quite a catch. Aphrodite said with a mischievous smile, which made the blonde blush even more. Since they were no longer in immediate danger, Naruto took the time to look Annabeth over. She was the same age as Bianca, or perhaps even his age, with long curly honey blonde hair, put in a ponytail, tanned skin, a slender and athletic body, and captivating storm gray eyes that shined with curiosity and intelligence. Her attire consisted of black boots, navy blue jeans, an orange Camp Half-Blood shirt, and a gray jacket over it. She also had a necklace with several clay beads and a college ring on it. All in all, Naruto would say Annabeth was just as beautiful as Bianca. He thinks I'm beautiful. Annabeth said in a whisper as she blushed like a tomato. Right. Annabeth stuttered with a light blush, not used to such gestures. So, you're a demigod? Naruto asked, curious to know whose child Annabeth was, since he couldn't figure it out from her energy, as it didn't have a unique feel to it, like Bianca's and Nico's. Yeah, a daughter of Athena. What about you, are you a demigod? Asked Annabeth, wanting to know if Naruto was another demigod. But if he was, then who was his godly parent to grant him such powers? It was also possible that he could be the child of a titan, or maybe even a primordial, to have such powers and the strength to subdue Artemis, an Olympian. Especially at night when she was at her strongest. Nope, not a demigod. I'm a mortal. Naruto answered, smirking at Annabeth's confused look. Mortal? That could mean a lot of things. So, what are you? Asked Annabeth, knowing he definitely wasn't an ordinary human. It's certainly not normal at all, plus there's the fact that he beat Artemis at her strongest with seemingly no effort at all. Hermes said, looking with interest at the screen. Beautiful and smart, asking me what I am. And that is a question that comes with a very long story. Said Naruto, with Annabeth blushing again at being called beautiful. And? Are you going to tell me? Annabeth asked, eager to learn more about him and what he could do. Perhaps I'll tell you someday. But that day isn't today. Naruto replied, with Annabeth pouting at not getting to learn more about him. Okay, what about your powers? I know it was energy manipulation, but I'm not sure what kind, exactly. Said Annabeth, knowing some demigods could manipulate types of energy, depending on who their godly parent is, usually children of Hecate, who are able to use magic. Honestly, I'm very curious about their abilities, I mean we know they come from chaos, but we don't know what limitations they have. Demeter said curiously, to which Athena nodded, sharing the same line of thought as her aunt. Annabeth gasped in amazement when Naruto created a black power ball in his hand, with the demigod looking at it in fascination. Though still keeping her distance, remembering what the attack did to Thorn. It's not energy, at least like you know it. It's called Kai, it's also called latent energy or fighting power, which directly translate to life force. Kai is a tangible energy within all living things, and with the right training, it can be drawn out and used for a variety of attacks and techniques, like my black power ball and God split cut, along with my other attacks. It can also be used to enhance one's strength, speed, endurance, and even achieve flight. A person's Kai can also be increased with more training to surpass their physical limits, but it also requires Kai control, as the more Kai a person has, the harder it is to control. Naruto explained, with Annabeth listening intently, amazed at what one could do with Kai. You said Kai is in all living things. Does that mean I'd be able to use Kai? Annabeth asked, excitedly at thought of having such abilities. With the right training, yes. Answered Naruto. That's interesting. Annabeth said, taking note of the revealed information. Perhaps with this we will be able to plan something, to at least delay the imminent. Zu said to himself as he put all his attention on the screen. Would you be able to teach me? Asked Annabeth, hoping he'd teach her, as it'd be much easier if she had someone who could already use Kai, teach her how to draw out her own. I'll think about it. Naruto replied, seeing this as a good chance to get closer to Annabeth and her friends, and a better chance of turning them against the Olympians. It seems that the Lord Chaos's plan has already begun. Annabeth said nervously. Yes, and all because of our hunting sister. Ares said with a frown. Hey, leave my sister out of this. Apollo yelled with a frown. Apollo, I know very well that I am not a saint, but the counterpart of Artemis got our counterparts in a problem that we will only get out of by a miracle, by giving the container of chaos, the reason he needed to start with his plan 0 gods. Ares said coldly, to which the sun and moon gods shuddered. This is all so much worse than Luke. Percy said nervously. Yes, and worst of all, Naruto has more than enough power to back up his actions. Talia said. Before they could say anything else, they both felt a sudden spike of power coming straight from Artemis's tent. With Naruto immediately taking off running when he sensed Bianca was inside. Earlier Artemis's tent. Once the 3 demigods had arrived at Artemis's tent, the goddess had Andromeda, Talia and Bianca sit down across from her, while Zoe sat down next to her mistress. Afterwards, Andromeda and Talia remained silent and just listened, as Artemis began telling Bianca about the supernatural world, with the explanation basically being the same as their own, with a few additions here and there. During the explanation, Andromeda and Bianca did take the time to really look at Artemis, who was still in her adult form. She had long silver-white hair, held up by an icy blue headband with white swirling designs, while a few strands that framed her face, moonlight pale skin, eyes that were a mix of pale blue, silver and periwinkle, with narrow pupils. Her attire consisted of pale blue fur boots, bandages wrapped around her lower right leg and her left thigh, a dangerously short white kimono, with cloud-like designs along the edges, and held closed by a pale blue obi, a beaded necklace with a large blue stone on the end, bandages wrapped around her arms, pale blue fur gloves, and finally a white fur animal pelt draped across her shoulders. Now then, I wish to make you both an offer, Bianca D'Angelo and Andromeda Jackson. Artemis said, with Talia scoffing as she knew exactly what the offer was and was glad that she wasn't included. I hope my sister doesn't join that deer-worshipping sect. Nico said with a frown. Shut up you pig, don't talk like that about Lady Artemis's hunting, or I'll disembowel you. Phoebe yelled in annoyance, to which Hades looked seriously at the huntress who threatened her son. Artemis, you better control your Girl Scouts, because if they do anything to my son the Tartarus will look like the heaven compared to my fury. Hades said with a voice so cold that the temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. So will Lord Hades. Artemis said nervously as she looked at Phoebe with a frown. Her answer hasn't changed from the first time, and now it's definitely not going to change after the stunt the hunters had just pulled. What offer? Bianca asked, doubting she'll accept it, but was at least trying to be cordial. The chance to join my hunters, to hunt by side for eternity, to remain maidens forever and reject love for as long as you live. Artemis said. It is a great honor, devoting oneself to Lady Artemis, living with your new sisters, and swearing off males. Thou would be granted eternal youth, to live forever and hunt. Added Zoe, wanting to convince them to join the hunt. DRRR, this is when my sister is brainwashed into joining their cult. Nico growled furiously, which annoyed the hunters, who were about to attack the, according to them, pig, but it only took one look from Hades to make them sit in their seats trembling with fear. No. I'm fine at camp. Andromeda answered, refusing the offer, given not only would that mean she'd have to watch as her friends and loved ones died while she still lived, but after what just happened, she didn't feel too eager to join a group of trigger-happy hunters. That camp is filled with nothing but fools and children. Zoe scoffed, disappointed that Andromeda couldn't see that joining the hunt was the better choice. Well, I wonder who is more foolish, those from Camp Half-Blood or the Artemis Girl Scouts, who, despite seeing that their goddess was defeated by the Chaos Vessel without even breaking a sweat, rushed towards him believing they could defeat him. Ares said mockingly, receiving a glare from the aforementioned goddess which he completely ignored. Says the one that attacked an unknown person and then got beaten into the ground. Andromeda retorted, with Thalia smirking at her cousin's comeback, while Zoe growled in anger at the reminder of their humiliating defeating by that male. See, even in the book itself they agree with me. Ares said, laughing mockingly, which only increased the fury of Artemis and her hunters. We thought the boy was an enemy and reacted accordingly. The only mistake was not aiming to kill. Zoe said, seeing Naruto's attack against them as proof that he was an enemy. Yeah, cause that worked out so well afterwards with that magic arrow. If anything, that may just make him attack you with the intent to kill this time. Stated Thalia, since Naruto was currently healing from having a fucking hole in his side, she doubted that regular arrows would do anything. He'd probably be more pissed off than hurt. The word angry falls short, the boy is more than pissed off by the reckless actions of the hunters against him, which only prompted chaos to start his plan. Leo said with a frown. It is clear thou have not learned your lesson in trusting a destructive male, Thalia Grace. And it is disappointing thou are rejecting Lady Artemis's generous off Andromeda Jackson, choosing to stay at that camp. Zoe retorted, with both girls glaring at her for the insults. At least at camp, we don't randomly attack people, believing they're enemies. And I doubt Bianca would want to join either, since it was her friend you shot and tried to kill. The best place for her and her brother is Camp Half-Blood. Retorted Andromeda. That, you show who's boss. Ares said, shaking his fist in the air with excitement. Thou should not speak for others. Shut up. Bianca screamed suddenly, surprising everyone in the tent, while unknown to them, the surrounding shadows flared up for a moment before returning to normal. Why should I accept either of those choices? I just met you guys, and while I'm thankful for your help in trying to save me and Nico, I don't really know you. Bianca said to Thalia and Andromeda before turning to Artemis and Zoe. And I definitely wouldn't join you, either. Not after how you attacked Naruto and then almost blowing him up, nearly killing him. With him only surviving thanks to his own powers. Not to mention that if he hadn't jumped in the way, that arrow would have killed me and my brother. Bianca shouted, knowing if Naruto hadn't gotten in the way, she and Nico would have died instead. Hades looked with a look that promised a lot of pain to Artemis, who only flinched and shrank in her throne. Maybe in another life, Bianca might have joined the hunters, liking the idea of being free to live her own life and not having to take care of Nico all the time anymore. What a bitter irony. Percy said bitterly, as that was exactly what happened, but with a fatal result. But not in this life, not after what happened, along with the legend she's read about Artemis, that didn't exactly make her out to be some benevolent patron. Turning Callisto into a bear after she was raped by Zeus, who also took Artemis's own form. Unleashing the Caledonian boar on the city of Caledon after the king forgot to honor Artemis, which was an honest mistake, and then sabotaging their efforts to appease her. How she and her brother Apollo killed the sons and daughters of Queen Niobe of Thebes, while leaving the youngest daughter alive and turning the queen to stone after she insulted their mother, Leto. Though the last one, Bianca could understand, since anyone would be angry at someone for insulting their mother, but Artemis and Apollo took it too far in killing her children. Then they even left the youngest daughter alive as an act of mercy after basically killing her entire family. Yeah, real merciful. Hearing that, the younger hunters looked at Artemis in disbelief, not thinking that their mistress who defended women so fervently was capable of doing that. Is that true, Lady Artemis? Said one of the youngest hunters, who seemed to be about 12 years old, in a state of shock. Artemis, upon hearing the words of her hunter, only looked away, not knowing how to respond to that, while the hunter, seeing that reaction of her lady, only she backed away from her in fear, just like the other young hunters. If anything, Bianca saw Artemis as just another murderer, killing anyone that displeases her in any way, even if it wasn't their fault. Not even her own hunters were safe if Callisto was anything to go by. That is totally true. Ares said, nodding at what the daughter of Hades thought, which earned him a glare from Apollo. Oh, come on little brother, you know as well as I do that sagebrush would kill anyone she disliked, be they male or female, just like you two did to the daughters of Niobe. Ares said with a sadistic smile as he saw how the youngest of his sister's Girl Scouts distanced themselves more and more from them. Look, thanks for telling me all this, but I'm not going anywhere, besides back to my brother and Naruto. And after he's fully healed, we're all leaving. Said Bianca, believing that Naruto would be able to protect her and Nico from any monsters or anything else. Even he was capable of taking down a goddess, she's sure they'll be fine. I'm afraid that isn't possible. Due to the powers he possesses, along with the strength to challenge and best an Olympian, he would need to be brought to Camp Half-Blood to be watched and monitored. Artemis said, knowing someone like Naruto couldn't allowed to wander freely, not with the powers he has at his disposal. This only served to anger Bianca further as she clenched her fists tightly. Seeing Bianca angry, Andromeda also couldn't help but get a strange sense of deja vu. Bad words, Artemis, you only added fuel to the fire and turned it into a fire. Hera said with a frown. Already she hated her husband's bastard daughter, but seeing that because of her all the gods were in danger of being erased from existence only increased her hatred towards the goddess of the moon. Are you kidding me? Not only did you attack him and nearly him, but now you want to basically make him a prisoner. Just because of something he might do. Demanded Bianca, not believing they were actually going to make Naruto a prisoner just for defending himself, her, and Naiko. With the power he possesses, the boy must be watched to make sure he doesn't become a threat. Zoe stated, with Bianca scoffing at her words. A threat? Are you saying that because of his power or because he's a boy? I bet if Naruto was a girl, you'd want him in here as well, to join your little hunt. You probably wouldn't have attacked him either if it was a girl defending us. Go ahead, tell me I'm wrong. Said Bianca, her words making Artemis and Zoe wince at the double standard being thrown in their faces, especially since it was true. Once again, the daughter of Uncle Hades is right. I am 100% sure that if the dark-haired boy were an Artemis woman, she would move heaven and earth to have that power with her. Ares said. If Naruto was a girl, Artemis would instantly have tried getting her to join the Hunters as an invaluable member. Honestly, even now, she'd considered turning him into a girl, under the belief of it being a punishment. Seriously, even now Artemis wants to keep giving Chaos more reasons to destroy us. Hermes yelled in annoyance, receiving a look from Apollo. Apollo, please calm down. Hestia said, wanting to avoid creating an even bigger conflict than the one that already existed. Seeing that neither of them had a response, Bianca scoffed knowing she was right. Figures. Is it really a surprise that you were all phased out by Christianity? Bianca said. Unfortunately for Bianca, despite how long it's been, that was still a sore subject for all the Olympians. With Artemis's previously building shame vanishing, replaced with an ice-cold rage as she glared at Bianca, with her eyes glowing silver. You should learn to be careful with whom you speak to, Bianca D'Angelo. Artemis said lowly, as her divine power gathered around her, refusing to let anyone insult her in such a way and live. Artemis, I think you didn't understand what I told you about threatening my children, right? Hades said, releasing his aura throughout the room, which caused everyone in the room to shiver. Please, brother, calm down. Hestia said, trying to calm the growing fury of the god of the underworld. Seeing that Hestia was about to cry, Hades decided to calm down, but not before warning his brother's spoiled girl. Alright Hestia, I'll calm down. Hades said, getting a smile from Hestia. You were saved this time, Hunter, but I'm warning you, if something happens to my children because of you or your hunters, whether in that dimension or any other, there will be no place you can hide from my fury. Hades said with a voice so cold it would freeze hell itself, to which Artemis nodded. Zeus should better control your spoiled brat, because if that happened in an alternate dimension, there is a possibility that something similar will happen in our dimension, and Chaos planned something similar. Poseidon said, looking at Zeus, who, although with a frown, nodded. However, before Artemis could smite Bianca, Naruto suddenly appeared in front of her with his hand wrapped firmly around her neck, making the goddess gasp as her power returned to normal. Seeing that, everyone in the room was surprised, while Artemis sighed in relief to see that her counterpart did not do anything to her uncle's daughter, but nevertheless she was upset that the pig, according to her, touched her counterpart with her between many quotes dirty hands. Apparently, the lesson hasn't sunk in yet, let me give you a reminder, little goddess. Naruto growled, with his eyes flashing a light gray color. Before anyone could react, Naruto threw Artemis out of the tent and into the snow. Artemis cried out when Naruto stomped his foot on her back, with it being temporarily broken. Looking, Artemis for once felt afraid as she saw Naruto glaring down at her, with his god split cut around his hand, while a black and purple aura surrounded him. His power, it's even stronger than before. Artemis thought, now afraid to see that she hadn't even seen Naruto's true power in their previous fight. How can that be possible? Athena said in shock at the new information. But from before I could defeat Artemis at its highest point, now they want to tell me that it is more powerful. Poseidon said with wide eyes. This is bad, this is so bad. Hermes said nervously. If he's more powerful than before, that could only speed up the Chaos Lord's plans further. Demeter said, scared of what Chaos could do to her counterparts. This is all your fault, Zeus, because of your indulgence with that bastard, our counterparts are about to be wiped out of existence by Lord Chaos. Hera yelled, looking furiously at Zeus, who frowned but couldn't refute his wife's words. Though what Artemis didn't know was that she was feeling only a fraction of Naruto's true might. After all, he didn't want the gods to learn just how strong he really was. How can it be possible that this is not his full power? Ares yelled, terrified of what could happen. You see, in the trouble you got us into because of your irrational actions, Artemis. Athena said with a frown. While Aphrodite enjoyed the misery of her rival, obviously she was afraid of what could happen to her counterpart, but that fear was overshadowed by the immense satisfaction that it gave her to know that, even if it was in another dimension, they had put in your place to the moon, bitch. Surprised? It's another ability of mine, every time I'm close to death and come back from it, my power grows. So that arrow you hit me with, it only made me stronger. Naruto said, smirking viciously, as Artemis's eyes widened at hearing this, as it meant that with his regeneration, he could potentially become invincible. Everyone in the room at such a revelation could only widen their eyes in shock since, if the boy was already strong, each battle he fights will only make him more powerful. Apart from giving him plenty of reasons to destroy us, you give him more power, which Artemis now follows. Ares said exasperated. Naruto mentally smirked at her expression, as this way, he'd be able to show more of his power with each life-threatening injury he receives, and the gods will just believe it's his ability making him stronger. Which isn't untrue, as the best lies are the ones that have a layer of truth to them. And if he's lucky, those Zenkai boosts may end up being the push that he'll need to later unlock Super Saiyan God and maybe even Super Saiyan Rose. Super Saiyan God? Percy asked curiously, to which a note with information appeared in front of Thalia. What does the note say, Thalia? Annabeth asked looking at her friend. Super Saiyan God, exclusive transformation of the Saiyans which allows them to reach the power of the gods. The Saiyan who possesses this transformation will be able to face the gods of destruction, but nevertheless he will not be able to defeat because the power of these latter is still unknown. Thalia read, leaving everyone in the room pale. Shit, we're screwed. Hermes said while holding his head. And well fucked. Ares said nervously, of course he was a full-fledged warmonger, but nevertheless he knew when he was facing a threat that surpassed him, which seemed to have been unleashed in that other dimension. He only prayed that his counterpart did not do something stupid and it would end up adding more fuel to the fire. Now then, from what I saw, you were about to try and kill Bianca, someone I care about very much. That either makes you very brave or very stupid, since you've seen I can already crush you. Perhaps I need to break you instead. Naruto growled, angry that this arrogant brat dared to try and hurt Bianca. Now he'll show her what happens when someone really pisses him off. Sisters. Ready thy magic arrows. Zoe shouted, running out of the tent with an explosive arrow, with the rest of the hunters doing the same, and aimed the arrows at Naruto, since if one could incapacitate him, a few dozen should be enough to kill him. Maybe they are crazy, it will only make things worse. Hera screamed, scared of what could happen. No, please stop. Artemis said to herself. Naruto glanced at the hunters before looking at Artemis with a dark smirk, the goddess's eyes widening in fear. No, don't, Artemis shouted, hoping to stop her hunters from making a mistake that would cost them. Please don't let anything bad happen to them. Artemis thought begging any superior deity that her hunters would not get hurt. Sadly for her, the only superior deity is chaos. Fire. Zoe shouted as she and all the hunters fired their arrows at Naruto. Unfortunately for them, Naruto was ready this time as he held out his hand, stopping all the arrows in midair with his telekinesis, shocking everyone. Only for the hunters and Artemis to be horrified when Naruto shot the arrows right back at them at a double speed. This resulted in the arrows punching straight through their bodies, thankfully in non-lethal areas, but still inflicting plenty of pain. These were the lucky hunters, the unlucky ones were the hunters that had arrows impaled in them, which exploded not a moment later. The more experienced and sage hunters could only cry seeing their sisters fall in battle, but on the other hand, Naiko was smiling darkly, seeing the deer-worshipping sect die. No. Artemis screamed in horror at seeing her adoptive daughters be killed and injured, with it getting even worse when the rest of the arrows exploded, sending shrapnel everywhere. Resulting in even more hunters being either killed or injured by the explosions and shrapnel. Naruto looked around at the resulting destruction and death before looking at Artemis, with the goddess looking grief-stricken as tears fell from her eyes. What have you done? Artemis said, horrified at seeing more than half of her daughters being dead, with the rest being critically injured as their pain-filled cries cut into her heart. He only defended himself. Artemis, it's all your fault since you didn't know how to control your hunters. Athena said coldly, looking at the moon goddess who shuddered at her sister's words. What have I done? No, this isn't on me, this is on you for threatening Bianca. This is what happens when someone tries hurting the people I care about. This is the consequences because you decided to be smite happy. Though is it really a surprise that once again, your precious hunters pay the price for your arrogance, goddess? But I suppose you aren't really a goddess, you're just a pathetic brat. Naruto mocked before grabbing Artemis and tossing her over to her hunters, the ones that weren't dead anyway. Naiko had to do his best not to burst out laughing when he saw that scene. Oh, the satisfaction he felt seeing those who caused his sister's death die was so great that nothing could take it away from him. Humming out of the tent, Bianca, Andromeda and Thalia winced and looked sadly at the destruction and death. But while it was sad, they knew that Artemis and the hunters only had themselves to blame with how they tried to kill Bianca and Naruto. Again, in terms of the latter. At least he cares about those he considers family. Hestia said in her thoughts. Although she did not approve of Naruto's actions, she understood that he was only protecting those he considered family, although that did not prevent her from feeling sadness, seeing so many people die. We'll be going now, Moon Brat, but don't worry, I'll still go to Camp Half-Blood. But not because you think you can make me, it's so I don't have to worry about any Olympians being on my tail. Naruto said, before walking away, with the 3 demigods following after him, to rejoin Annabeth, Grover, and Nico. I apologize that you 3 had to see that, but when it comes to protecting my loved ones, I get less merciful to those that threaten them. Said Naruto, while looking at Bianca, who looked away with a faint blush, before glancing at Thalia and Andromeda, while taking in their appearances. It looks like someone will have competition. Aphrodite said sing-song to herself. Thalia looked to be a bit older than him, perhaps 15. Having spiky black hair that reached down to her neck, with 2 bangs on each side of her face, a blue highlighted bang and a blue thunder hairpin that he swore glowed. All of which made her blue eyes stand out, like a couple of lightning-filled sapphires, on her pale, but beautiful face. As for her clothing, she wore a short-sleeved black shirt, with blue lightning on the front, a sleeveless fishnet shirt, while having a black leather jacket worn over them, that also had blue lightning on it, along with having both a white interior and borders. All of which was short enough to expose her midriff. On her arms, she wore a pair of fishnet arm sleeves that started her mid-upper arms and stopped just short of her black fingerless, which has steel-knuckle gloves, along with blue lightning on them, as well. On her lower body, she wore dark gray jeans, with a belt that had a blue lightning lock, blue socks and black steel-toed hunting boots. Andromeda was around his age, with long black hair at the top that changed to violet tips at the bottom, with large green eyes akin to emeralds that shine through her pale skin, wearing a dark blue long-sleeved jacket over a gray hoodie, a violet t-shirt underneath, a blue skirt that hid her black sports shorts and lastly violet socks, worn under a pair blue and white running shoes. Well, at least I know that the gods are capable of creating true beauty. Naruto thought, seeing as Andromeda, Thalia, Bianca and Annabeth were stunningly beautiful girls and knew they'd only grow more so with time. When Annabeth and Thalia heard what the black-haired man thought of them, they blushed furiously, which Aphrodite noticed and just gave a mischievous giggle, wanting to see how this situation would develop. It's fine, well it's sad they died, they brought it upon themselves. Thalia replied, knowing he was simply defending his friend and himself, if she could do what he did, she'd do the same if she were in his position. Yeah, they can only blame themselves. Added Andromeda, as like Thalia, she would have done the same if she could, if she was in Naruto's position. Indeed. By the way, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Said Naruto, holding out his hands. Thalia Grace. Thalia introduced, while shaking his hand. Andromeda Jackson, Annie for short. Said Andromeda, as she did the same. Percy was uncomfortable hearing that as he now confirmed that this girl, Andromeda, was his counterpart. Ahahahaha, this is great, who would say that Percy would look like this if he were a woman? Leo said, being unable to contain his laughter when seeing that scene, which served to lower the tense atmosphere that had formed. Both girls were then surprised when he kissed their hands, like he did with Annabeth, and smirked at them. A pleasure to meet you, Thalia. And you too, kid. Naruto said, Thalia quickly taking her hand back and stuffing them in her pockets, while Andromeda felt annoyed at being called kid. My name's not kid, it's Andromeda. Said Andromeda, while holding her head up high. Only to gulp when Naruto walked up to her, making her back away until her back hit a tree. Andromeda looked up at Naruto, stared at her intensely, making the girl blush under his gaze. Dude, this is weird on so many levels. Percy said to himself, feeling very uncomfortable seeing his female counterpart blushing over a boy. So then, should I call you Brat, like with the so-called moon goddess? Naruto asked, while smirking. Hi kid, it is then. Said Andromeda, before quickly slipping past Naruto to rejoin Thalia and Bianca. He's staring at your butt. Thalia said with a small smirk. This made Andromeda walk faster with her face burning red. All while Thalia snickered at her embarrassment, while Bianca gained a strained smile. Hearing that, Percy turned green with disgust, which made his friends laugh. Oh Bianca, I think you and Thalia have nice asses, as well. Naruto said, making the 2 demigods blush, before quickly walking away. Those words said by the dark-haired man unleashed 2 different reactions. A blush on Thalia's part and a glare on Hades' part. Naruto may be the container of chaos, but that wouldn't stop Hades from being jealous of his overprotective father. Next day. Naruto stood with the demigods, the soul satyr, along Artemis and her hunters, the latter group being in a somber mood after they had been forced to bury and mourn their dead sisters. Most of them were also wrapped in bandages from their injuries. Currently, they were all waiting for Artemis's brother, Apollo god of the sun, to arrive and take them to Camp Half-Blood. Normally Artemis and her hunters would have left by now, but most of them needed proper medical attention, which they could get at Camp Half-Blood. While Artemis was going to keep an eye on Naruto, at least until a meeting was held. I just hope Artemis's counterpart doesn't do anything that might increase the fury of chaos and its container towards us. Hermes said nervously, to which everyone in the room except Artemis and Apollo nodded. Finally, the sun began to rise, accompanied by a bright burst of light on the horizon and an intense heat. Cover your eyes unless you want to be blinded, Naruto said, with the demigods and hunters looking away. The light and heat became more intense with each passing moment, with the demigods feeling like they were melting from the heat. Then, without warning, the light suddenly vanished, allowing them to look again. The first thing they saw was a red convertible Maserati spider, with the metal glowing from the intense heat. They also saw the snow had melted in a complete circle around the car. Out from the car stepped Apollo, with golden blonde hair, a bright smile, and dressed in casual clothing. "Lil sis," Apollo said, smiling widely at his sister, only to frown when she didn't react like she usually did. In fact, she didn't even seem to react to his presence. The reason became clear when Apollo saw Naruto, making the sun god glare at him, having heard of what he did to his sister and her hunters. However, before Apollo could teach this mortal a lesson, Artemis stopped him. "Apollo, don't. I know what you're thinking, and you can't fight him. He's already overpowered me at night, so he'll do the same to you, even though it's daytime. Please just take us to camp," Artemis said, looking at her brother with pleading eyes, knowing if he tried attacking Naruto, then it was likely he wouldn't survive. She already had to watch most of her hunters die, she couldn't watch her brother die as well. Apollo, hearing those words from his sister, was moved since he may be annoying and irritating, but he loved his sister very much, so he only smiled at his twin, who returned the gesture, although a little hesitantly. Seeing his sister's look, Apollo sighed in reluctance before nodding. "Yeah, let's just go," Apollo muttered, pulling out his keys and turning his sports car into a shuttle bus. With that, everyone piled into the bus, with the hunters and Artemis quickly sitting in the far back, wanting to put as much distance between them and Naruto. Both from their anger at him killing their sisters and fear that his rage would be directed at them again. "Looks like they finally learned their lesson," Hermes said with a sigh of relief, seeing that his sister's hunters would not further incite the fury of chaos and its container. "So, Naruto, Annabeth told us that power you have is called Kai, right? She also said that with the right training, anyone could use it, is that true?" Talia asked after Apollo started driving, both eager to learn if she could use Kai and wanting to distract herself from the fact she's currently miles up in the air. Naruto gave Annabeth a dry look, with the girl chuckling sheepishly before sighing as he created his god split cut. "Yes, my power is called Kai, and yes, with the right training, anyone could use it," Naruto said, much to their amazement that they might be able to use Kai. "That is so cool. Oh, what else can you do? What about energy blasts? Could you form weapons with Kai?" Nico asked, excitedly. Hades, seeing the expression of his son's counterpart, only laughed in an amused way since that Nico looked like a child in a candy store, while the Nico of this dimension only blushed with embarrassment. "Easy, Nico. You can do lots of things with Kai. Yes, I can perform several energy blasts, and while I can't show you at the moment, I can extend this into a sword," said Naruto, knowing to use that variation, he'd have to transform, and doing that right now would result in everyone dying. "And you'd be able to teach us how to use it?" Andromeda asked, interested in the idea of using Kai, as it'd definitely help her with how terrible her luck is. "Yes, I can teach those of you that are interested how to use Kai. But be warned, the training will be brutal, and I don't hold back," said Naruto, while smirking wickedly, unnerving them a little, but none of them backed down, since the prospect of using Kai was too tempting. Finally, it wasn't long until the bus arrived at Camp Half-Blood, with Apollo landing just outside the big house, where Chiron and Mr. D were waiting for them. "Sup Chiron, bro?" Apollo greeted his former student and brother. "Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis, it's an honor to have you here," Chiron said, while smiling at the twin archers. "Is that the boy?" Mr. D asked, glancing at Naruto, both of them having been informed of the unknown who'd be brought to camp. "Yes, that's him. Dionysus, I know you don't like heroes or the campers, but please, for all of our sakes, do not anger him," Artemis warned quietly, knowing Mr. D wasn't one to hold back from insulting people, but they couldn't risk angering Naruto any more than she already has. "Let's just hope D's counterpart doesn't screw it up," Hermes said nervously, to which the aforementioned looked at him with a frown. Mr. D nodded slowly, seeing how serious the situation was if Artemis herself was telling him not to anger a boy, of all people. Just then, they heard a gasp and quickly looked, only for them to be shocked when they saw a symbol floating above Bianca's and Nico's heads. The symbol being a black and gold helmet, the symbol of Hades. Shaking off his shock, Chiron raised his arms, while the campers all bowed nervously at there being two children of the Lord of the Underworld at camp. "It has been decided. God of the dead and riches, Lord of the Underworld. Hail Bianca D'Angelo, daughter of Hades." Hail Nico di Angelo, son of Hades. Chiron declared, with Bianca and Nico looking up in shock to learn who their father was. Our father is Hades. Bianca muttered, well feeling relieved at this knowledge, since from all the stories she's read, Hades was one of the few gods that never raped a woman and, in fact, hardly ever cheated on his wife, Persephone. So, it's a relief that he's their father, rather than one of the crueler gods. And isn't that ironic, being relieved her father was lord of the underworld? Hades just smiled at his daughter's thoughts, while everyone except Hestia frowned in outrage. Just then, everyone felt the ground shaking, before down by the cabins, as the ground split open between cabins 1 and 3, with a new cabin rising up out of the ground, accompanied by the wailings of souls, as a jet black stone cabin appeared. The 13th cabin, the Hades cabin. However, the shock didn't end there, as not a moment later, a bright glowing white infinity symbol appeared over Naruto's head. This made Chiron, Mr. D, Artemis and Apollo pale at realizing what this meant, while the campers looked confused, not knowing the symbol. Yo young man, WHWH what I is yo your name? Chiron asked, unable to hide the tremble in his voice. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, champion of the primordial of the void, chaos. Said Naruto loudly, shocking everyone to hear that the first primordial had taken a champion, with a few campers also freaking out. This was something Naruto and Zamasu had decided while he was unconscious. As well, such a move would make the Olympians more wary of him, it'd also mean they'd be less likely to try something, as well. Unless they wanted to incur the wrath of the first primordial. Everyone in the room was shocked, as Chaos was not only working in tandem with the Uzumaki, but had claimed him as his champion. The situation gets worse. Athena said nervously, to which everyone nodded. Sis, D Apollo said, sensing they were being called to a council meeting. Artemis and Mr. D nodded, before the three gods vanished to Olympus. Well, I suppose you two should go get situated in your new cabin. Said Naruto, while planning to make his own home in Camp Half-Blood, as he had no desire to stay in any of the Olympian cabins. Olympus. Meanwhile, in the Olympus council chambers, the 12 Olympians had all arrived, with even Hades being present. With Hestia tending to the hearth, as usual. Hades. Explain yourself, why have you broken the oath? Demanded Zeus, glaring at his brother, a glare Hades matched. As always paranoid, how many times do I have to tell you, Zeus, that my children were born before the oath? Hades said, exasperated. You forget, brother, both Nico and Bianca were born before that oath was made, remember? You tried striking them down with lightning, and if not for my intervention, they would have died with their mother. Retorted Hades, glaring at his younger brother darkly, still angered at Maria's death. Remembering the death of the mother of his demigod children, Hades frowned as he looked at Zeus, who shuddered. Aphrodite, continue reading. Zeus said nervously. Brother, I believe the more pressing matter is the reveal of this champion of chaos. Poseidon interrupted, before a fight could break out. Zeus grunted, before sitting back in his throne, knowing Poseidon was right. The reveal of chaos having a champion was far more concerning. Artemis, you encountered this boy, tell us what happened. Zeus commanded, looking at his daughter, with Artemis nodding, before telling the council her and her hunter's encounter with Naruto. From witnessing him destroy a helicopter and killing a manticore, to how he easily defeated her and her hunters, along with the deaths of some of her hunters, omitting the reason, since she doubted her uncle would take kindly to her almost smiting his daughter. After she finished, Artemis looked at Hades before getting up and bowing to the god of the dead. Uncle, I humbly request that the hunters that died by the hands of the champion of chaos to be revived. Please, they did not deserve to die in such a way, and I wish for them to have a second chance. Artemis said, not wanting her hunters to pay for her mistake, since it was her almost attacking Bianca that led to their deaths. Hearing that, Hades' fury shot up to unimaginable levels, so much was his anger that the shadows began to cover the entire room. You, damn pampered brat, how dare you ask me to such a challenge to revive your stupid brats when they earned their deaths, and if that was not little, after having attempted against my children's life. Hades yelled furiously, which shook everyone in the room. Listen to me, Artemis, and listen to me well, this offends your counterpart or not, I will not let it go, so take good care of your stupid brats, because when they die eternal torture awaits them in the punishment camps. Hades said with a voice so cold that the ground literally began to freeze under his feet, to which Artemis nodded nervously. No. Hades said coldly, as he looked down at Artemis, while the shadows rose around him. In fact, you should be grateful that Chaos's champion was there. If not for him, my children would have died twice from your actions, with you even attempting to smite my daughter. Hades hissed, glaring furiously at Artemis, who paled under his anger. If either Nico or Bianca had died because of her actions, whether direct or indirect, Hades wouldn't have rested until every single one of her hunters was dead and sent screaming to the deepest pit in Tartarus. The hunters upon hearing those words shuddered, while Hades looked at them with a face that said I hope they are ready for their punishment when they die, which made the hunters pale and tremble even more. Uncle, please. I said no. They are dead through your actions alone, and dead they will stay. You and those girls made your beds, now lie in them. Said Hades. Enough. Artemis, Hades is correct, your hunters have paid the price for their actions, and now so will you. Zeus said, with Artemis looking at him, both shocked and hurt by this. Artemis, hearing that her father's counterpart would not help hers, only gave him a look of betrayal to which Zeus responded with a cold look, which surprised her. Don't look at me like that, Artemis, I've been too lenient with your behavior all this time, but seeing these events unleashed by your counterpart showed me that I should have put a heavy hand on you. Zeus said coldly. Father, haven't I paid enough? Both through my humiliation and the loss of my hunters. Artemis said, only to wilt when he father glared at her, something he's hardly, if ever, done to one of his daughters. No, because it is through you that the champion of chaos could become any enemy of Olympus, along with chaos itself. So, from this moment on, you will remain at Camp Half-Blood with your hunters to watch chaos's champion. Zeus declared, much to Artemis's shock and horror at being forced to remain in close proximity of Naruto. Be lucky that I'm not ordering you to become his vassal in hopes to appease both him and chaos. Zeus said, with Artemis wincing at this. Father, your counterpart isn't serious, is he? Apollo said nervously, to which Zeus looked at him with the same coldness as Artemis. I'm sure my counterpart is serious, although it pains me to admit it, because of Artemis's actions our counterparts are in big trouble. Zeus said grimly. Ah yes, father. Artemis said, hanging her head in defeat. Well, it did hurt him to see Artemis like this, given how she and Athena were his favorites among his daughters. Zeus was well aware that now was the time to discipline her as both a king and a father. It was about time that spoiled brat was given a corrective. Hera said, exasperated. Not even a moment later, Apollo fell out of his throne, screaming in agony while clutching his head in pain. This had the rest of the gods look at him in shock, worry, and fear at his sudden pain. Everyone was worried when they saw how Apollo's counterpart screamed in pain, especially Artemis, since she didn't want anything bad to happen to her brother. Hey. Apollo, brother. Hermes said, kneeling beside him to see what was wrong, only for Apollo to suddenly stop screaming and open his eyes, showing shock, worry, fear, panic, and disbelief. Brother, what happened? Artemis asked, worried and fearful at the look in his eyes. The prophet of the great prophecy's gone. Apollo shouted in disbelief. Hearing this, it didn't take long before the entire council fell into pandemonium. But what the shit? It was the unanimous cry that sounded in the room upon hearing those words from the sun god. Asgard. Meanwhile, the Norse faction was in a similar situation when suddenly, the prophecy of Ragnarok had vanished from all their texts, even Odin, with his magic eye, could no longer see Ragnarok occurring. While this happening, Loki silently seethed that his destiny and chance to shine was been taken from him. The trickster god mentally swore to find out who took away his destiny and make them pay. Meanwhile, Frey watched all this happening with bored half-lidded eyes and a small smirk on her face. How interesting. I do hope to meet the one who's caused such chaos. Freya thought. Heaven. Up in heaven, the archangels looked at Michael, wondering why he had summoned all of them. Brother, what has happened? Gabriel asked, seeing her brother's expression, and knew something bad has happened. The prophecy of the end, the apocalypse, it's gone. Not changed, like when Father and the Satans perished, it's simply gone. Michael revealed in disbelief, with the archangels being shocked to hear this. Hindu faction. Finally, the Hindu faction was also in an uproar of disbelief, as the prophecy of Brahman's next last judgment and reset of the universe was no longer going to happen, in fact, it would never happen ever again. The higher-ups were currently meeting to discuss how this happened and what could have caused this. All across the various factions and pantheons, all prophecies involving great change or the end of the world have all suddenly vanished, with no one understanding how it happened. None of them realizing that all these prophecies have been brought to an end by the will of the one true God. Zamasu. End of chapter. Chapter 3. After a well-deserved break, all the occupants of the room were contemplating how to avoid the potential consequences that the chaos plan could bring, which, to be honest, they could never truly prevent. Damn, the situation is worse than I imagined if the great prophecy has been broken due to the intervention of Lord Chaos, said Athena, her mind working overtime trying to find a solution to this problem. Apollo, can you try to see what will happen in the future of the book? Zeus asked seriously, looking at his son, who nodded and proceeded to do as ordered, only to shake his head. I'm sorry, father, but I can't see anything. It's as if the future within that book is blank, said Apollo. This is bad. Without the great prophecy, we won't know what will become of our counterparts or ourselves, nervously exclaimed Hermes. Hermes is right, and what ensures us that the champion of chaos, using the abilities bestowed upon him, can't travel between dimensions and do the same as he will in his original dimension? Demeter said, somewhat terrified at the thought, a sentiment shared by the other occupants of the room. All of this could have been avoided if Zeus had been firm with the behavior of his hunter bastard daughter, Hera said, frowning, to which Zeus looked at her somewhat angrily. Don't look at me like that, Zeus. It was more than clear that the champion of chaos had no interest in following his plan to end us, and the actions of your bastard daughter were the push he needed to fully engage in the plan, Hera said, silencing the god of the skies. Enough. Arguing among ourselves won't solve anything. It's better that we continue with the reading to find out what will happen, said Hestia, being the voice of reason in the chaotic room. If it's not too much trouble, I would like to continue with the reading, Lady Hestia, said Annabeth. While she was scared of what Chaos's plan might entail, she couldn't deny that she was very curious to know what was about to happen in the book. Luke gulped nervously as he kneeled before Kronos' coffin, containing the remains of the Titan King that grew with each new demigod that joined their fight against the Olympians. Everyone in the room, especially the gods, paid close attention to this, as they could at least extract something positive from this dire situation. It was to understand what Kronos planned and who were the soldiers under his command, allowing them to devise a plan to neutralize them when the time came. My lord Kronos, there has been news from my spies in Camp Half-Blood, 2 new demigods have recently arrived, the children of Hades. And not only that, but we have learned that Chaos has chosen a champion, one whose power rivals, if not surpasses, the gods. Luke said, while shuddering when the coffin rattled lightly, before going still. So, Chaos has now chosen to intervene in our war. Kronos stated, the Titan would have scowled if he could, as this presented a problem for his plans, if the first primordial was intervening. That's not all, my lord, the minor gods that have sided with us, they have reported that Olympus has descended into madness. The reason being, that the great prophecy it's gone, not altered or changed, simply gone. Luke said, well worried of what this could mean, since a prophecy simply vanishing has never happened before, let alone one as important as the one deciding the fate of Olympus. This news definitely had Kronos' full attention. The great prophecy was no more. This was good, very good, as it meant he no longer had to try and persuade any of his son's demigods to join him. Now he can personally destroy the gods himself, not only that, but he was sure he could twist this into his favor and speed up his resurrection. This is bad. Without the great prophecy, we don't know who the winning side will be in the upcoming war against the Titans. Talia said nervously. In addition, Kronos will have an easier time conquering Olympus. Annabeth said, echoing her friend. This is bad, very bad. Apollo and Hermes said with fear. The great prophecy is gone. With the prophecy gone, it all but assures our victory. Go, tell the forces of this, and have them spread it among the demigods, that the time of the Olympians will soon end. Kronos ordered, with Luke nodding, while being relieved that he wasn't punished for this news, and that with the disappearance of the great prophecy, it means they would succeed in their goal to overthrow the Olympians. Later. Luke looked over Kronos' army of monsters, demigods, and minor gods that had joined them. Most of them were muttering amongst themselves, all of them on edge with the news of the champion of chaos revealing themselves and the power they possess, along with the fact the great prophecy was no more. But he's sure that with the news he'll tell them now, it will invigorate them and show that they have chosen the winning side. And hopefully, it'll bring more demigods to their cause as well. I knew Luke had many demigods under his command, but that he also has the minor gods is concerning, nervously said Annabeth. What did you expect, daughter of Athena? Unclaimed demigods, feeling unloved by their divine parents, it's obvious they would join Kronos to end their parents. As for the minor gods, it doesn't surprise me that they joined Kronos, considering a certain promiscuous king of the gods relegated them to being insignificant deities. Furthermore, their children do not have suitable accommodations in the camp, said Hades coldly. This angered Zeus, who couldn't refute his words, and said in Hestia. Listen, all of you. I'm sure you're all worried with the news of the champion of chaos and their power, along with the disappearance of the great prophecy. But I have come to tell you that this is proof that our cause to overthrow the Olympians is a just one. Because now, we no longer have a prophecy to decide for us who will win, we will win by our own strength, not because it was decided. And together, we will make a better world for all demigods, one where we don't have to prove ourselves to our so-called parents. With the Titans ushering in a true golden age for all. Luke declared, with the demigods cheering at his words, with the minor gods only wanting payback against the Olympians, and the monsters not really caring, only wanting the Titans in control, so they wouldn't have to worry about being hunted anymore. See my point? The fact that the vast majority of you don't claim your children just because they didn't prove their worth is something that causes us problems. They allied with Kronos to end us, and Chaos and his champion could exploit the resentment that unclaimed demigods harbor, uniting them to their cause. This would be 1,000 times worse than Kronos' plan, said Hades, causing a shudder among the gods. Unfortunately for Luke and Kronos, this wasn't a sign of their impending victory, but one where the future was no longer set in stone. With it now being left to one person to decide how the future goes. But that person being the champion of chaos, the very person that they should have been wary of. But the fates. Meanwhile, the fates were currently running around, panicking and getting angry, as all around them, the threads of fate and lifelines were coming unraveled around them. And there wasn't anything they could do about it. The situation is going from bad to worse if the fates are in a panic, nervously said Athena, with Apollo nodding in agreement. Nothing was going right anymore. Everything was falling apart. Dozens of fated events were no longer happening and in fact, were being erased before their eyes. Bianca D'Angelo joining the hunters, only to die after going on a quest. The RRR, cursed hunters, growled Nico in fury, with Hades nodding in agreement. That reminds me, I have a certain lieutenant in my domain to torture, said Hades with a sadistic smile, which was mirrored by his son, sending shivers through the gods, especially a certain huntress goddess. Please, Lord Hades, do not torture my lieutenant. I'll do anything, but please do not disturb her rest, pleaded Artemis, kneeling before Hades, who looked at her coldly. Meanwhile, Aphrodite was doing her best not to burst into laughter at seeing her hated rival humiliate herself before Hades. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't dragged my daughter into your deer-worshipping cult. In that other dimension, you tried to kill not only my daughter but also my son. It makes me wonder if, in our dimension, you would have tried to kill my son just because he disagreed with Bianca joining your cult. And if I recall correctly, many of you have murdered innocent men whose only mistake was crossing paths with you. So, I hope this is clear, Moon Goddess. Any hunter who dies will face endless torture and punishment in my realm, starting with your beloveds, O Belladonna. Live knowing that your so-called beloved hunters will pay the price for your arrogance and pettiness, said Hades with such extreme coldness in his tone that the atmosphere in the room seemed to freeze, while Artemis and her hunters trembled with fear and terror. Artemis being captured and forced to hold up the sky. Artemis shuddered upon hearing that, as she did not want to bear the burden of holding up the sky again. The RRR, cursed Atlas, exclaimed Apollo in fury. His own nightshade being killed by her father. Artemis simply lowered her head with sadness, recalling the death of her lieutenant, only to pale upon realizing the fate awaiting her due to her actions. She could only pray that her uncle would be merciful, but to her misfortune, Hades' decision was final. And Talia Grace taking her place as lieutenant. And to have Uncle Hades torture me for eternity once I die, no thanks, said Talia, crossing her arms. All of it was gone. Even now, the fates tried looking into the future, but each future they saw, it was all vanishing before their eyes. What kind of sadistic retard watches this crap? The fates finally screamed in frustration as they saw the future they so carefully planned out fall apart before their eyes. But Zamasu. I love this show. Stated Zamasu while sipping his tea and watching as all the various factions and pantheons tried figuring out the cause behind the sudden disappearance of their doomsday prophecies. We're merely a television show for chaos, said Percy, eyes wide, as the other demigods nodded. Well, it seems he's thoroughly enjoying watching the panic and fear in all of us, the Stoll brothers said, trying to lighten the mood, with trying being the key word. His favorite though, was the one where the beings that controlled fate were running around, like headless chickens. It was all quite funny to the first primordial. To be honest, it's quite entertaining to see the fates losing their minds, said Leo, to which everyone looked at him with furrowed brows. Okay, bad timing, Leo said, feeling everyone's eyes on him. After watching as the fates were rendered hopeless and useless, as those worthless old crones should be, as far as Zamasu was concerned. He waved his hand, changing the scene to show Camp Half-Blood and his champion. Knowing that Naruto has a habit of providing great entertainment with his actions, Zamasu sat back to enjoy the show he's sure that Naruto will put on. Camp Half-Blood. Everyone in the room, especially the demigods, became tense because they didn't want Chaos's champion to do anything to their counterparts if they messed up. Naruto walked through camp while carrying several giant wooden logs over his shoulder, placing them in a pile, before going to get more. At the moment, Naruto was in the middle of collecting supplies to build his home here at camp, basing it off the hideout cabin that Goku Black and future Zamasu used in their original universe. Having found the perfect spot on one of the many hills surrounding Camp Half-Blood, giving him a view of the lake and forest. 2 days have passed since he, Bianca and Nico were taken to Camp Half-Blood, with the siblings being claimed by their father Hades and Naruto being claimed as the champion of chaos. Since then, they've gotten settled in for the most part and familiarizing themselves with the camp. With Bianca and Nico getting settled in their new cabin, while Naruto searched for a spot to build his home. He was also able to get some target practice in at night when the harpies tried attacking him, only to end up being vaporized. Though Naruto was mildly annoyed when Artemis returned to camp, revealing that she was being punished for attacking him. With the punishment being that she and her hunters were forced to stay at camp to watch him for the time being. "Let's just hope that Artemis doesn't screw up again," said Ares with a furrowed brow. But it wasn't that surprising, since Naruto was sure Artemis told the other Olympians what he did and Zeus likely wanted him watched closely. Not that it'd really matter, since none of them would be able to stop him from leaving if he wanted. Thankfully, the hunters and Artemis haven't done anything besides glare at him from afar, but he's sure they'll try something again once the fear fades away. "Please, any higher being that may exist, I beg you, please don't let my hunters end up dead," pleaded Artemis in her mind. "Ha ha ha ha, oh, little goddess, you have no idea what awaits you," said a voice in her mind that Artemis didn't recognize. "Who are you?" said Artemis in fear, only for the voice to disappear into nothingness. "Sis, are you okay?" said Apollo, concerned. "Yeah, Apollo, I'm fine," said Artemis nervously, which didn't convince Apollo, but he let it go for the moment. Placing another log in the pile, Naruto stepped back and began looking at everything he had gathered to see if he had everything he needed to build his cabin. But, while Naruto had been collecting his supplies, he didn't notice that he had drawn a large crowd as all the campers looked at him in amazement at his casual show of strength. What made this even better for all of the girls and the guys that swung that way was that Naruto had done all this without his shirt on. Despite being only 14, Naruto had very well-defined muscles, though thankfully, not big bulky ones. But rather, more compact but still rock-hard ones. With all the girls and the guys who were interested happily taking in the free show that they were getting. Aphrodite licked her lips upon seeing that Adonis, while the other women in the room blushed furiously at the sight of the dark-haired man's muscular body. "He is really strong and big," Andromeda muttered with a glazed look in her eyes. "Oh man, this is super awkward," said Percy with a green face, which made the other demigods in the room laugh, simultaneously relieving the tension that had settled in the atmosphere. "How does he do it? Body slam elephants," said Annabeth, torn between wanting to know how Naruto got so strong and simply admiring the view. Annabeth, upon hearing what her counterpart said, blushed furiously, while Percy furrowed his brow, feeling somewhat jealous. "Oh, he could slam me all he wants," Talia said, shamelessly. "Talia?" Annabeth said, in a scandalizing tone. "Yes, Talia, what's going on with you?" shouted Annabeth, her face red at her friend's counterpart's words. "Oh, come on, Annie, you won't deny that you wouldn't want that hottie to hug you with those big muscular arms," said Thalia with a blush, causing Annabeth to turn redder than a tomato at her friend's brazen words. "Ultimately, that girl is Zeus's daughter," said Poseidon with an expressionless face, to which Zeus frowned. "Don't judge, Annie, you were thinking it too," retorted Thalia, with the daughter of Athena immediately looking away, with a blush on her face. "Yeah, Annabeth, we're all teenage girls, with the hormones that come with it. So you don't really have any room to claim any moral high ground here," Andromeda said, knowing that they were in the middle of puberty, so it's only natural that they would have such thoughts and reactions. "See, even Seaweed Brain's counterpart agrees with me," said Thalia, laughing at two things. Annabeth's blushing face and Percy's pale face, which she found quite amusing. Bianca shook her head in amusement at the expressions on everyone's faces, but could understand them. Given she once saw Naruto training back at Westover without his shirt on and she hadn't even been able to look at him for a week without her mind turning the very adult thoughts. "At least I learned to filter what I say," Bianca thought, having also accidentally said some embarrassing things during that time. Now she was better at keeping such thoughts to herself. She then gave Nico a light glare when he smirked at her. Unfortunately, her brother was also able to know what she was thinking and never let her forget. "Oh, now I want to know what she said," said Aphrodite with a Cheshire smile, to which Hades frowned. "Just wait, Nico, we'll see who's laughing once you find someone to stare at," Bianca thought, smiling wickedly, knowing she'll get back at her brother when he finds someone that he likes. Nico, upon hearing those words, shuddered in fear, feeling pity for his counterpart. "Hey Uzumaki." The sudden shout snapped everyone out of their ogling of Naruto to see who called him out. Only to groan or sigh when they saw Claris LaRue walking up to Naruto with a smirk on her face. Who's that?" Bianca asked, still learning the names and faces of the other campers. "Is she a child of Ares?" Nico asked, getting a few surprised looks from the other campers. "Yeah, how'd you know that?" said Annabeth, surprised that he knew who Claris's dad was. "It just seemed obvious," replied Nico as he gave them a shrug, since while he and Bianca didn't know everyone's names and faces, they were given descriptions of what campers were born from which gods goddesses. And going by Claris's appearance and attitude, it was obvious she was a child of the war god. Well, yeah, that's Claris LaRue, daughter of Ares. She's also the resident camp bully and has a habit of dunking new campers' heads in the toilets. I'm guessing she didn't do it to you too, given well Thalia trailed off. I just hope Brutus's counterpart doesn't screw it up, Percy muttered nervously. What did you say, Prissy? Shouted the mentioned person in fury. Nothing, said the dark-haired one as he looked at the screen. She's afraid we'll unleash an army of the dead on her. Stated Bianca with a deadpan expression, figuring Claris didn't want to risk angering them, given who their father is and the powers they inherited from him. Despite the fact that she and Nico had only just learned their father was Hades 2 days ago and haven't even tried seeing what their powers were. But when dealing with the Lord of the Dead, it's probably better to be safe than sorry, even if he is one of the more relaxed gods. Being the child of Hades is the best, said Nico proudly, to which the other demigods looked at him with envy. Reasons were not lacking, as Nico had an army of the dead at his disposal to do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. Moreover, his father was the god of wealth, so he didn't have to worry about money. Yeah. But I'm guessing that since Naruto's only a champion and after everyone learned what he did to the hunters and Artemis, she wants to fight him, herself. Thalia said, while smirking, since it was clear how that was going to end. This will be interesting, said Ares, watching the screen intently, eager to see if his daughter could put up a fight against the champion of chaos. Although he knew she wouldn't win, he wanted to see how well his daughter fought against the champion of the first primordial. Shouldn't we stop her? Asked Selena Beauregard, worried and not wanting her friend to get hurt. Nah, I'm sure she'll be fine, maybe. Andromeda said, feeling a little vindictive to see Claris get knocked around, still holding a grudge from when she tried dunking her head in the toilets when Andromeda first arrived at Camp Half-Blood. Claris smirked as she walked up to Naruto, having been waiting for the chance to fight him after hearing he took down the hunters and even Artemis herself. Though she scowled when Naruto didn't even acknowledge her presence, even walking past her to go get more wood for his cabin. Hey, I'm talking to you. Claris said, standing in front of Naruto while glaring down at him with the Saiyan Shinji hybrid looking at her, boredly. And what exactly do you want, little girl? Said Naruto, with Claris growling at being called little girl. I heard you managed to fight all the hunters and even Artemis herself. I wanted to see if you actually could fight, but so far, I haven't seen anything impressive about a runt like you. Claris taunted, not being impressed by Naruto's strength since she and her siblings were strong as well. So, how about we spar to see if you really are as strong as everyone's saying? Said Claris, eager for the chance to fight Naruto and see what he can do. Even though I already have an idea of how strong he is, I'd still like to see how my counterpart fares in a battle against him, said Claris, interested as she watched the screen. Naruto looked at her for a moment before simply walking around Claris. No thanks, I'm busy. Maybe another time. Naruto replied, wanting to focus on getting his home built, with Claris scowling at his words before smirking. Ah, what's the matter, is the big bad champion scared of everyone seeing he's not as strong as he claims? That you'd rather run away, like a coward? Claris taunted, with the growing crowd around the two inhaling sharply before looking at Naruto to see how he'd react. Everyone in the room froze upon hearing the words of Ares' daughter's counterpart while the latter paled upon hearing what her counterpart said. What the hell, Claris, what on earth is your counterpart thinking? Shouted Percy, alarmed. Damn, let's just hope that because of that provocation, Naruto doesn't destroy the camp, said Annabeth nervously. Naruto stopped mid-step at hearing Claris's words while narrowing his eyes. Alright, the little brat wants to play tough, then we can play. Naruto thought, planning to show everyone just how outclassed they really are when compared to him. This is going to get ugly, said Konoha nervously, with his brother nodding in agreement. Turning to face Claris, Naruto smirked as he made a bring it gesture with his hand before placing his hands behind his back. Smirking, Claris charged forward and threw a punch at Naruto, who effortlessly blocked it with one finger. Not stopping, Claris began throwing punch after punch at Naruto, with the champion blocking everyone with only his index finger while keeping his other hand behind his back. Then suddenly, Claris jumped back, surprising the daughter of Ares. What the would I do that? Claris said, not having meant to jump back. Well, that's impressive. I was just about to attack and end this, but your body reacted and likely saved your life. I suppose you do have good instincts rather than just run in and fight. Naruto mocked before turning serious, then to everyone's shock, he immediately vanished in a burst of speed. His speed increased dramatically after his fight against Artemis, said Hermes, shocked by the demonstration of speed from the Saiyan Kaishin hybrid. However, said Naruto, appearing behind Claris, shocking everyone again at his sudden reappearance, with Claris turning to look at him in disbelief. I'll now show you something. A very small display of true power. Naruto said, before raising his hand and flicking Claris, then to everyone's further shock, the demigod was sent flying into the air with a scream. Naruto then vanished again, reappearing behind the airborne Claris, with his arm pulled back to hit her. Only for Naruto to smirk, and rather than hit Claris, he merely placed his hand on her shoulder. Despite it not seeming like an attack, Claris cried out in pain as she felt her shoulder was knocked out of its socket before she was sent crashing to the ground, with a crater forming from the impact. Everyone could only look on in muted shock and even a little fear at what they just witnessed. Even more so, as they saw that Naruto was still flying in the air before descending back to the ground. "Is that the same power you used against Artemis?" Andromeda asked in amazement at just how quickly Naruto took Claris down, along with a little pity at hearing the daughter of Ares groan in pain as her siblings picked her up and rushed her to the infirmary. "Oh please, if I used the same strength against Artemis, she'd be little more than a red stain, just from my flick. What you saw wasn't even 1% of my power," replied Naruto, shocking everyone further to hear he didn't even use 1% against Claris, along with amazing those that previously saw him fight. "That was a total humiliation," said Leo with wide eyes, watching as they beat up Claris, while the latter felt a phantom pain in her shoulder. "Okay, that settles it, you have to teach us to use Kai," Talia said, smiling in excitement, now wanting to learn to use Kai even more now. Only for her eyes to widen when Naruto suddenly reappeared in front of her, holding her chin and looking at her in amusement. "I'm sorry, what exactly do I have to do?" said Naruto, with Talia gulping at the close proximity. Could you teach us to use Kiplis?" Talia asked, nervous that it may have come off as demanding and she didn't want to risk angering someone who could throw her into orbit. Upon seeing that, Talia blushed. She wouldn't deny that, like her counterpart, she also felt a bit intimidated. However, that feeling was overshadowed by seeing how dominant the Saiyan was. Well, since it's coming from a beautiful girl like you, I suppose I could you teach how to use Kai," Naruto said, looking at Talia and then at Bianca, Naiko, Andromeda, Annabeth and Grover, all of them excited at the chance to use Kai as well. "Meet me by the beach in 2 hours and come prepared. Anyone else who wishes to learn to use Kai is more than welcome join, but do be warned, the training will not be easy," said Naruto, directing the latter part to the rest of the campers, with some looking intrigued and interested at the idea of learning to use this Kai they were talking about. Upon hearing that, the demigods became excited and, at the same time, somewhat jealous that their counterparts were learning to use Kai. Naruto made the offer, since it'd be a good opportunity to get more allies when the time comes. Nodding, the campers were about to go to their respective cabins to get ready, only for Naruto to wrap his arm around Thalia's waist, surprising the girl. "And Talia, don't worry about demanding anything from me. I have no problem fulfilling your every desire," Naruto whispered in Thalia's ear, with the demigoddess's face turning bright red at the insinuation. Talia turned as red as a tomato upon hearing that, while her mind generated many not so holy images of her and the Saiyan in bed, engaging in adult activities. She immediately shook off his arm and quickly walked away, while Bianca, Andromeda and Annabeth giving her annoyed and jealous looks. Only to look at each other with the same expressions, refusing to let the other girls get one over on them. Meanwhile, Naiko and Grover looked between the girls and Naruto in amusement. 20 drachmas says Andromeda makes the first move. Grover said. Percy, I didn't know you liked cucumbers, teased Aphrodite, to which the mentioned demigod turned green with disgust. 30 says Bianca does, replied Naiko. And 50 says you two will drop first during training. Hearing Naruto's voice made the two freeze up before looking and see Chaos's champion smiling sadistically at them with his dark aura surrounding him. Caught red-handed, said Leo with a mocking smile, seeing that Naiko and Grover's counterparts had been caught. You try to be on time, children, I'd hate having to come find you if you don't show up. Hehehe, said Naruto while laughing madly, making the two shiver before quickly running off. Later. Naruto stood before the gathered demigods, seeing that in addition to Bianca, Naiko, Talia, Andromeda, Annabeth and Grover, almost 36 other demigods had also joined in to learn to use Kai. Okay, before we begin, for those that don't know what Kai is. Kai, which is also known as latent energy or fighting power, which directly translate to life force. Kai is a tangible energy within all living things, and with the right training, it can be drawn out and used for a variety of attacks and techniques, such as this. Naruto explained before creating a black power ball, amazing all those that haven't seen it. This is very interesting. Perhaps knowing this could give us a chance to survive in case Chaos's champion has the ability to jump between dimensions, murmured Athena, already formulating contingency plans for such a situation. But their amazement and shock growing when Naruto aimed it at the ocean and fired it as a large yellow beam with a black aura surrounding it. The blast cutting a path through the water before settling down. Damn, that boy has a lot of destructive power at his disposal. I wouldn't want to imagine when he unleashes it all, said Apollo with a shudder. It can also be used to enhance one's strength, speed, endurance, and even achieve flight. A person's Kai can also be increased with more training to surpass their physical limits, but it also requires Kai control, as the more Kai a person has, the harder it is to control. Now then, any questions? Naruto said, looking at the demigods to see if they wanted to ask anything before the training started. Is Kai like magic? One of the demigods asked, a child of Hecate, to be more precise, thinking Kai was the same as magic. Actually, I wonder the same thing, said Annabeth, thoughtful. No, Kai is not like magic. While the two are similar, they're also completely different energies. With magic, it gives the user control over natural energies to manipulate, transform, or control anything, or anyone. While with Kai, you use the energy that's within yourselves to increase your basic abilities, create attacks, and fly. Naruto explained, knowing people would think Kai was the same as magic, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. Upon hearing that, Annabeth quickly began taking notes, eager to gather all the information possible about Kai. Can you use magic? Annabeth asked, curious if Naruto could use magic as well as Kai. I know a little magic, yes. Bianca, Naiko, come here for a moment. Naruto said, with the children of Hades stepping forward, wondering what Naruto was going to do. Everyone watched as Naruto pointed two fingers as the siblings, a few tensing, believing he was about to kill them, with Naruto firing a purple beam at them. Though rather than die, Bianca and Naiko were surrounded by a purple aura before, to everyone's surprise, their clothes suddenly transformed into completely different outfits. Whoa. That's awesome. Naiko said, amazed and looking at his new outfit, seeing he was now wearing the black mage outfit from Final Fantasy. Man, my counterpart looks great, said Naiko with a smile, seeing the clothes his counterpart was wearing. Though, while Naiko was happy with his outfit, Bianca couldn't help but give Naruto an annoyed look at his choice of clothing for her. Lightning, seriously? Bianca asked in embarrassment, not used to wearing such a revealing outfit. Most of the male demigods, upon seeing Bianca dressed like that, blushed, while Hades, being the overprotective father, frowned and began muttering about dark-haired individuals corrupting daughters. Yeah, you'd look better in Tifa's outfit. Naruto said, smirking, while aiming to transform her clothes again, only to stop when Bianca shook her head rapidly. Then no. No, lightning is fine. Bianca said, blushing brightly, since Tifa's clothing would be even more revealing than her current outfit. Besides, she supposed it'd be a good outfit to get Naruto's attention. Upon hearing that, Hades furrowed his brow even more. He didn't care if Naruto was the champion of chaos, but if he made his daughter suffer, he would traverse dimensions to give him a good beating. Okay, as you could see, that was an example of magic, turning Bianca and Naiko's clothing from their previous outfits to their current ones. Naruto said, before pointing his fingers at himself, transforming his outfit as well into a replica of Goku Black Sky, Naruto's preferred outfit to wear. Now then, if no one has any more questions, we can begin. Naruto said. I have a question, why are you still wearing that belt? Talia asked, seeing Naruto was still wearing that weird fur belt she and the others saw him wearing when they first met. Looking at said belt, Naruto looked back at them, before to the demigod's shock, the belt unraveled, was revealed to actually be a monkey's tail. What the hell? Shouted the demigods upon seeing that scene. Well, I can't exactly get rid of something when it's attached to me. Stated Naruto, turning around to show that the tail was in fact a part of him. Yo, you have a tail. Why do you have a tail? Annabeth said, shocked to see he had a tail, and now even more confused than she was before when trying to figure out his origins. I have a tail because I'm a Saiyan, a race of powerful warriors and fighters. Saiyans are naturally in tune with Kai, making it easier for us to learn how to use it. Our tails also grant us access to a powerful transformation when certain conditions are met. Naruto explained, shocking the demigods further to learn about such a race of creatures. Athena, when we get out of here, gather all the information you can about the Saiyans to be prepared in case that boy has the ability to cross dimensions, Zeus said in a low voice, to which the mentioned goddess nodded. Where are the rest of the Saiyans? Andromeda asked. They were wiped out years ago by a frost demon tyrant that grew paranoid and fearful of their power and potential. Only a handful survived, with me being one of the few survivors. Replied Naruto. Basically, a paranoid like Zeus, said Hades with an expressionless face. What he didn't tell them was the fact that the Saiyans were in fact an alien race from another planet. Given Naruto would prefer keeping his cards close to his chest, at least until he was able to get more of their trust. Faced with the new revealed information, everyone had their eyes wide open upon learning that the race the dark-haired one belonged to came from another planet. Well, that complicates things a bit, said Hermes, nervously laughing. Besides this way, it also won't cause further chaos, since for those that are in the know about the rest of the supernatural world, will pass the Saiyans off as a race of Imkai that had been wiped out by a devil, like what happened to the Nekashu. Very clever, said Athena reluctantly, as with the characteristics of the Saiyans, they could easily pass as one of the Yakai clans in the Shinto pantheon. That boy is very cunning, said Hermes. Okay, no more questions. Let's begin. Said Naruto, as everyone stood in attention, ready to start training. Time skip 3 days. 3 days have passed since Naruto started training some of the campers to use Kai. He had them start out by first meditating and sensing the Kai within themselves before projecting it outside of their bodies. After they all had managed to do that, with some taking longer than others, Naruto began showing them the basics, like enhancing their strength and speed, along with working on flying. He was going to hold off on teaching them how to perform Kai blasts until they had better Kai control, not wanting them to accidentally blow themselves or each other up. What surprised Naruto was that Andromeda, Thalia, Bianca and Nico all had a fairly large amount of Kai. Though given their parentage, he supposed that would be obvious. Everyone else had moderate amounts of Kai, with Annabeth also having a surprising amount. The mentioned ones swelled their chests with pride upon learning that information, while the other demigods were somewhat jealous. Currently though, it was Friday, meaning it was time for capture the flag. And with the hunters here, it was also a friendly match between the hunters and Camp Half-Blood, of which the hunters have won the past 56 times in a row. Some of the campers had been hoping Naruto would join in, since if he was on their team, they would definitely beat the hunters. Even Chiron had been hoping Naruto would take part in the game. Only for the champion of chaos to reject the offer, since if he took part, then it was likely Artemis would come out with even less hunters than she already had, since he knew at least some of the hunters would try something. Let's just hope your Girl Scouts have learned their lesson, sister, said Athena coldly, to which the mentioned goddess only shivered. Plus, Naruto didn't want to waste his time playing some game. Instead he just gave them advice on how to actually beat the hunters. They needed to work together and form an actual plan. Naruto did help Thalia and Andromeda, the co-captains, form a plan with Annabeth, though. It was decided that Andromeda and Bianca would guard the river, which acted as a border where they'd be at their strongest. With Andromeda's control over water and Bianca having worked on her umbrokinesis. While Thalia and Annabeth would make their way to the flag, with Selena leading a decoy team to lure the hunters away, giving them the chance to grab it. Once the game had started, Naruto had watched along with Chiron, Mr. D and Artemis, with the moon goddess smirking the entire time, fully expecting her hunters to come out the winners, again. Only for her smirk to fade when she saw the game going in the demigod's favor, before being shocked when she saw Thalia successfully cross the river with the hunter's flag. The hunters exited the woods with dejected and downcast expressions, with Zoe being the worst. With the lieutenant being completely soaked after Andromeda sent a wave at her when she tried crossing the border with the camper's flag. What made it even worse was that not even a moment after it happened, Thalia and Annabeth came running across the river with the hunter's flag, with the daughter of Zeus happily rubbing it in her face. Upon witnessing the humiliating defeat of the hunters, Nico couldn't contain himself and started laughing maniacally, causing the demigods to feel a bit uncomfortable. The hunters, on the other hand, began preparing their bows to shoot him, but a single glance from Hades was enough for them to understand that messing with his son was not a good idea. "Forgive us, my lady, we failed you," Zoe said, with the hunters bowing their heads to their patron. "It's alright, Zoe, you all did your best," said Artemis, still shocked that her hunters lost. Though the hunters and Artemis's attention turned to Naruto when he started laughing, making them glare at the champion. HM, it must hurt first you lose against me, twice I might add, and now you lose to the campers you hate. That's got to sting at your pride," said Naruto, while smirking at them. "Oh yes, and a lot," said Nico with a sadistic smile. "Thou shall be quiet, male," Zoe snapped while glaring at Naruto in pure loathing. "Why, what are you gonna do? Shoot an arrow at me? We all saw how wonderfully that ended last time," replied Naruto, with the hunters glaring at him heatedly. "You do well to not to antagonize my hunters, boy, or else," said Artemis, standing in front of her hunters just in case they did try attacking Naruto so she could protect them from his attacks. "It seems neither you nor your followers learned, Artemis," said Hermes with a furrowed brow. "Or what? You gonna turn me into a jackalope? Or maybe you'll turn me into a bear? That seems to be your response to anyone that pisses you off. Turn them into animals and then kill them. Like you did with Callisto," Naruto said. The younger hunters, upon hearing that, shuddered and looked at their so-called protector with fear as they began to distance themselves even more from her. On the other hand, Aphrodite was enjoying this more than any romance or drama she had ever seen, as she loved how in this dimension her hated rival was humiliated and put in her place. Callisto betrayed me and my trust when she broke her vows," said Artemis, glaring at Naruto, who merely smirked. "Is that what you tell your hunters, that she broke her vows and betrayed you? TSK, 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 Moonbrat, don't you know it's wrong to lie? Especially to those you consider your own daughters?" Naruto asked mockingly while waving his finger back and forth as if disciplining a child. "What's he talking about?" one of the younger hunters asked, who joined the hunt only 3 years ago, with the other newer hunters also being confused. "Nothing, he's just another lying male," Zo said, refusing to believe anything Naruto said. "It's true, that male is just a liar," said the older hunters in Artemis's hunt with a furrowed brow. "Oh really? So you don't want to know what happened to Callisto, what really happened? How she was raped by Zeus after he failed to seduce her by disguising himself as Artemis? How Callisto was ashamed of what happened and tried hiding it? But it was eventually discovered, and just how did Artemis comfort her hunter, her supposed best friend, after learning she had been raped by her own father?" Naruto said, looking between the shocked and horrified younger hunters and Artemis, who glared at him with glowing silver eyes, but he could still see a spark of fear and worry. The younger hunters, upon hearing that, definitively distanced themselves from the goddess of the moon with fear and headed towards Hestia, who could only look on with sadness. She didn't. Instead, the great and noble Artemis turned Callisto into a bear and threatened to kill her if she ever returned. Leaving her alone, scared and pregnant, so much for being the goddess of childbirth and the protector of maidens. Naruto taunted. "Callisto should have come to me after it happened. Instead she hid it from me and only revealed what happened when she couldn't hide it anymore," Artemis retorted, defending her actions. "Do you really want to defend yourself like that, Artie?" mocked Aphrodite, to which the mentioned goddess glared at her furiously. "Shut up, bitch," shouted Artemis with a furrowed brow, to which the Lady of Doves smiled maliciously. "Just wait, my dear Artie, all your hypocrisy will come to light and I'll be more than happy to see you crumble little by little," whispered Aphrodite in a low voice so that only Artemis could hear, making her shudder. Author's note. I really hate it when in many fanfics they portray Artemis as stronger than Aphrodite, when the latter is the daughter of the true Lord of the Sky and therefore much more powerful than Zeus's spoiled child. Moreover, with her dominion over love, she can make anyone fall in love with a monster, causing the immediate death of the victim. End of note. And how exactly could she have told you this? That she had been raped by your father while he was disguised as you? How exactly was Callisto supposed to tell you that and not worry of the exact same thing happening or being kicked out of the hunt and left on her own? Tell me that you wouldn't have reacted the same way and turned her into an animal or kicked her out of the hunt. Go on, prove me wrong. Swear on the sticks that if Callisto had told you the truth, you wouldn't have done either of those things. Challenged Naruto, his attitude changing to that of genuine anger and disgust at how Artemis was trying to justify what she did. "Come on, Artie, swear it and prove to your little daughters that you're telling the truth," said Aphrodite sadistically as she looked at the goddess of the moon, who shuddered, while her older and younger hunters watched, the latter with the hope that everything they had heard was a lie. However, Artemis did not respond. This made the hunters looking at their patron, hoping that she would prove that she was as kind as they believed. Only for Artemis to not have a response and couldn't look any of them in the eye. Would you have even tried getting justice for her? Or would you have just kept being daddy's little girl? Said Naruto, Artemis once again not having an answer, making him scoff before looking at the hunters. This is the woman you proudly serve, someone you abandons and threatens to kill her supposed friends when they aren't brave enough to reveal that they had been used and thrown aside. And be careful when you're alone with your mistress, little hunters. You never know when it's another god in disguise coming to violate you as well. Wouldn't want any of you being turned into bears, now do we? Naruto said, sarcastically, before taking his leave, while the hunters looked to their patron. Lady Artemis, he was lying, right? Another young hunter asked, fearfully. Oh no, my little hunters, the handsome black-haired man does not lie, and not only Callisto has been a victim of the hypocrisy of his protector, among many quotes. Aphrodite said with a dark smile while Artemis looked at her in horror. Aphrodite, please don't say it. Artemis said, crying while the pigeon lady smiled even more. Oh Artie, why don't you want me to tell them the story of little Aura? Aphrodite said, to which Artemis shuddered upon hearing that name. Who is Aura, Lady Aphrodite? Annabeth asked, although something told her she wasn't going to like the answer she would get. Well, little Annie, to summarize, Aura had a situation with Artemis similar to that of Callisto, who as you know was raped by Zeus and turned into a bear for betraying the trust that Artemis placed in her. Originally, Artemis and Aura were friends and hunting partners. But one day this friendship ended when after a hunt, Artemis and Aura went to bathe together to relax, but during the bath, Aura began to play with Artemis, saying that her butt was better and more beautiful than Artemis's. Now you might ask, what was the result of that, right? Aphrodite said, getting nods from all the demigods and the huntresses, both the youngest and oldest. Well, let me tell you. Aphrodite said with a barely hidden sadistic smile. Deeply offended, the angry Artemis went to Nemesis, the goddess of divine retribution, who arranged for Aura to be raped by Dionysus, who was driven mad with desire for Aura because of an arrow from Eros' bow. But knowing he could never seduce the stubbornly virginal Aura, Dionysus drugged her with wine, tied her up, and fucked her while she was unconscious and motionless. Aphrodite said, enjoying the horror on the hunters' faces upon learning what their protector had done to her friend. When Aura woke up, she discovered that she was no longer a virgin, but without knowing who was responsible, enraged, she proceeded to kill all the men she found. When she realized she was pregnant, she tried to commit suicide, but she couldn't and finally gave birth to twins. Shortly after the babies were born, she fed them to a lioness, but she refused, so she grabbed them herself. One of the children threw him into the air and, after the infant fell to the ground, he ate him. However, Artemis took the other child safely. Aura then drowned in the Sangarios river, where Zeus turned her into a spring. Aphrodite said maliciously as she finished the story. Now the question is, little hunters, what do you think? This is the true face of Artemis, the friend and in quotes protector of women, the eternal girl who does as she pleases, the hypocrite who does something for which she should kill, but for her it is okay. Aphrodite said, sadistically enjoying how Artemis collapsed and begged her hunters not to abandon her only to fall on deaf ears. Well, let's continue reading. Hestia said, trying to change the subject, to which Annabeth nodded. Once again, Artemis couldn't find the words to response, shaking them further. Finally looking to her hunters, Artemis saw that while her oldest ones, like Zoe and Phoebe, still had the same loyalty and admiration for her, refusing to believe what Naruto said. It broke Artemis's heart when she saw the fear and doubt on the faces of the younger hunters. Fear of her? I am not a monster, right? Artemis thought, for once, starting to wonder just who the real monsters were. The ones she hunts, or herself? Well, answering that question, my dear Artemis. Aphrodite said, looking at the broken goddess of the moon with a sadistic smile. You're the true monster. Not only did you turn an innocent woman and her children into bears and hunt them down, but you also drove another woman insane to kill an innocent baby. Aphrodite said sadistically, watching as with every word Artemis uttered, she shuddered and cried even more. Aphrodite approached and crouched in front of Artemis, mocking and satisfied to see the state of the enemy of men when her darkest secrets came to light. I told you, Artie, I told you that your darkest secrets would come to light, and now I'll enjoy watching you squirm in misery, oh protector of women. Aphrodite said quietly, releasing a sadistic chuckle. End of the chapter. What if the gods read about Naruto Konoha, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.